said I can't turn my phone off or the world stops and it's all my fault. And I don't go in airplane mode, cause they know when the flight takes off. And I thought I was born for the storm, but tonight I wish the rain would stop. I wish the rain would stop. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. Oh, not here, but I'm not gone. Love, I know I'm right, so I won't waste time to deny my doubts. And I just want to know what's on your mind, but the Wi-Fi's out. And I thought I was born for the storm, but I just need a break in the clouds. Just a break in the clouds. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. Oh, I'm not here, but I'm not gone. I'm the same as what I create. I gave it my name to speak for me. When it wanted a face, I showed it my face, as good as my face could look for me. I filter every smile and I edit every day. I just cut and I paste. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. She said it feels like another day, but I can't say, cause I can't stay long. I'm not here, but I'm not gone. Not here, but I'm not gone. Oh, not here, but I'm not gone. Oh, not here, but I'm not gone. And that is airplane mode.
Who are these people?
Oh, you mean that love for the 400th time? I'll be with you as long as I live. Know that I'll take your breath if you just take my hand. I give all that's in me to give. Won't you hear what I say? I would take you away on your whim. Oh, darling, I think I choked on your waterfall. When laying my hands on you, I had a dream of a cannonball. And the splinters all entered this room. And when the cross came suddenly, everything in front of me split into two. And now I dream of the waterfall that your hand might pull me through. with you as long as I live. Honey, I'll take your breath if you just take my hand and give all that's in me to give. Won't you hear what I say? I would take you away on your whim. My darling, I think I choked on your waterfall. When laying my hands on you, I had a dream of a cannonball. And the splinters all led to this room. And when the crash came suddenly, everything in front of me split into two. And now I dream of the waterfall that your hand might pull me through. And that is Minx.
Who are these people?
Great experiment.
All right. Read my lips. Brand new taxes, starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. Topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them axes, call it praxis. Chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches. We'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are calling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. I'll pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenement. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, because there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning, and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment. We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman, floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey. Cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. So we end the great experiment.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Oops. You know, it's funny. This is Indy. Hi. I was not planning on hitting that button just then, but that just worked out. I guess we're live. Hi, everyone. Oh, now I forgot. And now the reason why I wanted to do that was to turn on Substack. Now we're here. Now that we got to give them a minute to get caught up. I don't run the pre-show music to Substack because Substack makes clips afterwards, and if I put the pre-show music in, it sometimes makes those clips out of the first 10 minutes. So it will make a clip, a vertical clip of a part of Jesse's song. Just it looks weird. So anyway, hi everyone. This is IndieNewsNow Live. Welcome, Kameshwari Kate. Good to see you. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry you're not going to be able to hang out, but I appreciate you coming. You're not improbable. You are unbelievable is what you are. You're fantastic. I love you. You're the kind of people we do the show for, seriously, and why I keep doing this. Who are these people? That's a good question. Angel Rivera, Handsome Cynic, Go check him out Friday nights on Angel in the afternoon. Uh-oh. What happened? Something happened with Substack. According to Restream, we did not get our... We need to fix this. We got to do it live, fam. Sorry. Live video. No, that's not the right one. No. Let's go here. Yeah, stream key. Grab this. I thought I did that earlier, but I guess not. So let's post it in here. Nope, that's not the same key that I have, so no wonder why that did not work. All right, this is all the behind the scenes crap that I'm supposed to work out beforehand. Sorry, everyone. And now that should turn on. Yay, we're streaming. Hi, everybody. We're over on Substack now. They should be getting it live. Let me go over to the stream so that we can pick up chat and say hello to everybody that's showing up. All right, now we're there. Hi, everyone. Cool. Jake is already over there. Good. Giving it hearts. Thank you. All right. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay. This is Indie News Now Live. I am Indie, as you can see from my face, but those who are listening on the podcast can't. And it's been a week. It's been actually a week and a half since my last stream, since my last confession. And a lot has happened. And so much that I had a hard time choosing just like 4 articles or 4 themes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of articles, and then we're going to do a super extended Fuck Israel segment, because obviously it's been 12 days, so you can't even imagine how many horrors they've inflicted on the world in the last 12 days. And then we're going to do an extended lightning round. Normally I find 4 articles or stories to include in a lightning round, maybe 5. I've got 10 tonight. And mostly we're going to whip through headlines, might read a little bit here or there, a paragraph or 2, and dip into the article slightly, but I'm going to leave a lot of that for everybody else. And it's going to be more like a highlight reel where we kind of breeze through some stuff even quicker. We are going to read a couple articles, though. Before we get started, please, as I implore and beg every week, support independent media, because we are exclusively user-funded. And thank you again. Kameshwari Kate dropped $25 before I even went live, so I couldn't even show it on screen. But she supported us via Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. If you want a Cash App, it's $, Indie News Network. We've got paypal.me/Indie News Network as friends and family. There's no fees that way. Then we've got patreon.com/Indie News Network for the monthlies. The Indie News Now website is a lot more than just for a self-hosted website. It's a news aggregator that has hundreds of different creators and dozens of articles and videos published there every day. Also, you can get merch over at the INN merch store, and you can link there through IndieNewsNow.com. And we're live again over on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com. That's mine that I publish daily. And then also over at INN Newsletter, where there are 5 different network podcasts, including Boats Smashing into Other Boats and Nobody Wants to Work Anymore, which I am also co-host of both of those. So there's a reason to subscribe to both of the newsletters. You get unique content at each one. Okay. Again, I have got a loaded up show tonight. And the first thing we're going to talk about, and I hate talking about this stuff, which is flagrant Trump profiteering. Everybody knows the man's corrupt. Everybody knows the man's self-dealing. Everybody knows. But the level to which we're seeing happen has never happened in my lifetime. This is completely unprecedented. And the fact that nobody seems to be doing anything about it to stop him from continuing to profiteer and personally profit and profit his friends and family directly from the office in the most brazen way that's ever been seen, at least that I can see. Maybe I'm wrong. But here's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with a guy by the name of Parallel Mike. Parallel Mike he was actually live on AM Wake Up this morning, funny enough, which we co-host to the INN Twitter and then to Twitch and Kick as well, the places where AM Wake Up does not stream. So Parallel Mike is a co-host of a show called Geopolitics and Empire. Cognitive Dissonance, that he hosts with Hervoye Morik from Geopolitics and Empire and Monica Perez for the Monica Perez Show. He also is a financial analyst and a publisher and a analyst in the independent media space himself. So he's been analyzing these Trump disclosures of stock trades. And, all of these politicians are required to list when they buy and sell stocks. Now, you'll notice that even, Trump didn't really trade very much, but that should have been zero. Like, this entire chart from the time he got into office till today should reflect zero trades. All right. Because it should either be in a blind trust that he has no direct control over or knowledge of what they're doing, or they should not be trading at all because the Constitution says that he should not be profiteering off the office, correct? So Parallel Mike points out that Trump has disclosed thousands of trades in Q1. It's like he just took the mask off starting here. Like, He played ball, he played by the rules somewhat, and then all of a sudden it just exploded. And we're going to look at exactly what he's buying and what he's doing here. Thousands of trades. This isn't a hedge fund. This is the sitting U.S. president who's been moving entire markets daily with his tweets. I remember when he was president the first time, how everybody freaked out when he would tweet about Caterpillar the day that he had Caterpillar in the White House office, and it was kind of a big PR stunt where he was acting as a salesman, which was completely unfair to every other company in the space and completely out of the spirit of the office. But he started shilling and becoming like an infomercial president, right? So my response to this is that he's literally war profiteering right in front of everyone. And this doesn't even include his sons with the drone companies. That's a whole other story I'll get into in another show. It's insane that this is being tolerated. The USA is a pirate state where the law does not apply to anyone with enough money and influence to make a problem disappear. And sadly, that's what we're living in right now. A trade every 7 minutes, Ghost Star. That's on average, but they're making batch trades and but what's he buying? So let's go to Bean Boy, Judd Legume. The smoking guns in Trump's new financial disclosure. Here's where it gets insane. Trump publicly praised companies the same day he bought their stock. So somebody got into his lizard brain and was like, if you buy a stock the day a company's supposed to visit the White House, then you go on and you say some nice things about it, the stock usually goes up. And you're helping make that stock go up. So maybe you should buy some so that you can profit from it too and show that you're invested in that company. What a fucking joke. I guess. Okay. So, yeah, that's insane. All right. So let's look into this. On March 11th, Trump took a tour of a manufacturing facility in Reading, Ohio, owned by Thermo Fisher Scientific. They're a medical supply company. Fortune 500. During the tour, Trump lavished praise on Thermo Fisher, which uses the facility to manufacture prescription drugs on a contract basis. It was a great honor being here. It's a great company. All right, that's what he said alongside the CEO. You've done a fantastic job, and I'd like to congratulate you. Later, he asked another Thermo Fisher executive to share some great information about this incredible company. The executive talked about how Thermo Fisher is producing drugs for Merck and others at the facility. Trump then explicitly encouraged other pharmaceutical companies to contract with Thermo Fisher to onshore more jobs. He's literally, again, acting as a salesperson. He claimed that some pharmaceutical companies were building their own U.S. manufacturing facilities, but said they get here a lot faster by using this great company. Okay, I'm not going to play the video. Trump did not mention that on the same day of the tour, March 11th, he purchased between $15,000 and $50,000 of Thermo Fisher stock. Thanks to federal disclosure rules, they only require filers to list their transactions in broad ranges. Trump did not publicly disclose the purchase until May 14th. It was listed on page 38 of a 113-page document cataloging Trump's stock purchases in 2026. A 113-page document. And yeah, that's the document right there. Holy shit. Yeah, thousands of trades. 113 pages. I can go all the way down to the bottom here. All right. And there's addendums and summaries of contents. All right. 3,642 rows of trades. The last one, or the first one being January 5th AMD right there. And this is not sorted by date. But you can see some of the funds and companies he's buying. Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, AMD, Palantir, unsolicited. We'll get into that in a minute. He's selling these here, taking profit. All right, let's get back to the article. Trump also purchased between $51,000 and $115,000 worth of Thermo Fisher stock about a month before his visit on February 12th, because he knew he was going to visit there and the stock would go up. He made another purchase of Thermo Fisher valued between $15,000 and $50,000 on March 2nd. So at the time of his effusive remarks about Thermo Fisher, he had bought as much as almost $250,000 worth of the company's stock over the previous month. Huh. Can't imagine if that's corruption or anything. The fact that Trump visited a Thermo Fisher facility on the same day he purchased the company's stock and bought Thermo Fisher stock repeatedly in the weeks before his visit has not previously been reported. Womp womp. The disclosures reveal that Trump has been a highly active trader in 2026, executing thousands of transactions, many in individual stocks impacted by his administration's policies. In response to criticism, a spokesman for the Trump Organization claimed that the trades were completely separate from his official duties and managed by an independent outside financial advisor. Quote, President Trump's investment holdings are maintained exclusively through fully discretionary accounts independently managed by third-party financial institutions with sole and exclusive authority over all investment decisions, the lying spokesperson Weasel said. Trades are executed and portfolios are balanced through automated investment processes and systems administered by those institutions. Maybe on certain funds, maybe on a certain date, but not at the level of trading that you're seeing there. Come on, man. Give me a break. Like, I was born at night, but I was not born last night. The fact that Trump purchased stock in Thermo Fisher the same day he toured its facility undercuts this claim. Here we go. Further, the March 11th purchase of Thermo Fisher was unsolicited in the document. An unsolicited trade is one not recommended by a broker, but initiated by the customer. Somebody in Trump's world called his broker and said, buy shares of Thermo Fisher. That was not done automatically, unsolicited. If Trump wanted to legally remove himself from investment decisions, he could do so by creating a qualified blind trust, as I said before. Instead, before returning to the White House, Trump transferred his assets in a trust managed by his son, Don Jr. There are no legal or practical barriers preventing Trump from being involved in the management of his assets. Which is insane. I can't believe that sentence can be written. I say it kiddingly, but I'm not actually kidding. Thermo Fisher was not the only company featured in Trump's official remarks and his investment portfolio that day. After touring the Thermo Fisher facility in Ohio, Trump traveled to Kentucky and delivered a speech that afternoon. During his remarks, he singled out Apple and CEO Tim Cook for praise. Apple, a great company, $2.5 billion to manufacture 100% of the glass for iPhones and Apple Watches right here in Kentucky factories. Just ever the fucking shill. All right, Apple spending $650 billion on new plants all over the United States. Think of that. Who the hell else could have done this? Nobody else. Nobody else. I say it kiddingly, but I'm actually not kidding. Nobody else could. He's done a good job, Tim Cook. He's resigning, by the way. The same day, March 11th, Trump purchased between $250,000 and $500,000 worth of Apple stock. Again, unsolicited. Nothing to see here, fam. Holy shit. This is brazen. Trump had purchased between $1 million and $5 million of Apple stock in an unsolicited purchase on March 2nd. So again, advance notice of what he was going to do, bought $1 million worth of the fucking stock, knew it was going to go up and soar, and then took the ride. In total, he bought between $2 and $7.2 million worth of Apple stock during the month of March, including 5 unsolicited purchases. He sold smaller amounts of Apple stock on March 7th and March 6th and March 27th. Which is interesting. That's immediate profit taking. So he bought on March 2nd, then he sold on March 6th. So he made a little bit of money. He took some profit off the table, and then he did it again. And he took the ride 2 or 3 times that month. And every time he mentioned Apple stock, it would go up, and then he'd wait for the thing to drop. All right. Maybe it's the other way around. Or he bought it on the 2nd, said something, waited for it to go up, and then sold it when it was high. So that's what's happening here. He mentioned it on the 2nd, he sold it on the 6th. He mentioned it on the 20-something, on the 11th, and then he sold it on the 27th. 2 weeks later, stock went up $15 or whatever it was, and he made, $15 times divided by the price of the stock, okay, and times the number of shares, $15 times the number of shares he had, and he cashed out a nice, healthy profit for the week. During the speech, Trump also worked in another plug for Thermo Fisher. I just came from Thermo Fisher Scientific in Reading, Ohio, right across the way. Great American company. Again, investing $2 billion in domestic manufacturing. That is something. Would they have been doing that with him or without him? Probably, but maybe not. Maybe not because of all the tariffs that he put in place and made it more expensive for them to go over elsewhere. So they decided, well, we might as well just do it here. Also because of the time delay versus getting it here. On March 25th, Trump purchased between $50,000 and $100,000 in Micron technology stock. That has been one of the hottest stocks for the last 18 months or so. The transaction, again, was marked unsolicited. So that was on March 25th. The next day, he calls into Fox's news show, The Five. In the interview, he says he recently met with Micron's top executive and talked up the company's prospects. And it is one of the hottest companies. The stock has gone 7 or 8x in the last 18 months. Like literally, you would have made 8 times your money. Overall, he purchased between $217,000 and $530,000 in Micron between March 2nd and March 25th, including 4 unsolicited transactions. The fact that he touted Micron after building up a large position in its stock has not been previously reported. Nobody wants to report on this stuff because they don't want the retribution. Here's another one. Dell. He did this with Dell too. Okay. Yeah, $250,000 is peanuts. Okay, where is this? So Trump is a billionaire. Okay, first of all, he should not be trading individual fucking stocks. It's illegal for the president of the United States. It's completely anti-competitive. How about every fucking American company that competes with these guys? Why the fuck should they get a leg up? Fuck that. Thanks for watching. All right? Fuck that. This is bullshit. This is profiteering. This is not a little bit of money because he's a billionaire. I don't care. Guess what he's using that money to do? It's not to help the American public. It's to fucking grow his net worth and to inflate his fucking pathetic ego. Yep. Because you got nothing. And you're just, look, anti-constitutionalist. Tell me how you guys give a fuck about the Constitution and rule of law, except when it's your guy that's fucking doing it. So cry all you want. During an economic speech in Georgia 9 days later, Trump told the audience to go out and buy a Dell computer because they fucking suck. Dell suck balls. All right? They make phenomenal products. All right? No gamer, no serious computing person would ever buy a Dell. All right? They're business machines for business people that do basic bare bones business shit. All right? So he praised Dell and his wife for financially supporting Trump accounts for newborns, which is also a bullshit scam. All right? The proximity of Trump's February 19th speech to his purchase of at least $1 million in Dell stock, again, never been previously reported. Mostly because he just disclosed this shit like last week. So I'm not going to play his pathetic speech. I don't want to even listen to his fucking disgusting mouth. All right. Trump also purchased between $15,000 and $50,000 of Dell stock. Again, this is hyperinflating a market and completely manipulating the market on behalf of people that support him and fund his shit. This is not what a democracy, quote unquote, is supposed to do. Come on, man. Anyone that, like, if this were Joe Biden and not Donald Trump, your fucking hair would be on fire. Give me a break. Like, the partisan crap hackery is just garbage. Fucking, this is garbage. All of this. You should not be able to, first of all, he's a billionaire. Why is he doing all this shit? Why is he manipulating markets in order to inflate Dell versus another American computer company? Why is he doing it for Apple and not for another American company? This is what I'm talking about. All right. This is providing an unfair advantage to specific organizations that are literally lining his fucking pockets, that are doing exactly what he's asking in other areas. That's called fucking bribery. If you can't get down with the fact that that's illegal and a problem, we got a problem in this country. You don't actually want democracy. What you want is a king who's unaccountable to anyone. Good luck. I don't. Both those transactions, again, unsolicited. He's picking up the phone, or Don Jr.'s picking up the phone, going, my dad's going to Dell. Go buy me some Dell stock because I know the stock's going to go up because the dummies are going to move. The dummy's going to move the market because anything the president of the United States says can move a market. Because he can give out a contract that fucking buys 1,000 computers or 15,000 computers for the military instantly, even though Congress actually has to do it. When the president says so, guess what's going to happen most of the time? At least the news is going to cover it. The stock will bump, and then it'll come down when they realize, oh, he's full of shit and he can't do it anyway. All right? Trump also continued to encourage people to buy Dell computers. He pitched Dell products on February 27th, March 9th, April 16th, and May 8th. The May 8th remarks, delivered at a Mother's Day event, helped propel Dell's stock to an all-time high. So tell me how he's not manipulating this, helping to manipulate this company's stock. By promoting it repeatedly over months. When you've got the president of the United States as a salesperson for you because he's invested in your company, that's corrupt as fuck, and I don't know any other way to describe that. Other Trump stock purchases appear well-timed to take advantage of administration policies. For example, Not Us reported that Trump purchased $500,000 to $1 million worth of NVIDIA stock on January 6th, a week before Commerce Department officially approved the sale of some NVIDIA chips to China, which had been previously not approved. He also did the same thing with AMD, another chip maker that was approved to do business with China. Unsolicited. By law, he was required to report all these trades within 45 days, He missed that deadline, and as a result, he was fined $200. Less than a slap on the wrist. Let me pull that out of my pocket and pay you now. Fuck you. I'm going to personally profit from this office every single day, and there's not a fucking thing you can do about it. Go fuck yourselves, is basically what he's telling every single American, while telling you, I don't care about gas prices. I don't care about rising costs. I don't give a fuck about any of you fuckers. Now let's close this out by Sludge reporting that Trump just disclosed 5 million of NVIDIA stock purchases in Q1 in a new financial filing. This week, he's flying to Beijing with Jensen Huang, the CEO, personally pushing NVIDIA H200 AI chip sales to Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, and other Chinese firms. Nothing to see here. Jesus Christ. Again, anyone that's not calling this corrupt, you're a partisan hack, and I don't give a shit what you think. Sorry. Unreal, man. Unreal. Yeah, flying with Jensen Huang on Air Force One. Now, NVIDIA is now the most valuable company in the world, valued at over $5 trillion. Right in the middle of this whole heated Taiwan semiconductor, this war with China that they've been ramping up and promising and prepping for 2027. I reported on that with Reef in 2024. So we knew that they were getting ready, in the military prior to Trump taking office was already preparing for war with China. And most of them have said that basically there's no way we can compete in a war over there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But this got me fired up because, again, other than these couple of outlets, I don't see anybody reporting on this level of corruption. And we've never seen this level of corruption in this country before. Never. Not this brazen, this public, and just kind of in your face and go ahead, stop me kind of attitude, which is a disgrace. It makes me sad and angry, and it's why I do this shit, because I've got to get the shit off my chest, number one, and because half the people I know never hear about this stuff. And I don't know if it's because they're not subscribed to the same newsletters. I don't know if it's because they decide to bury their head in the sand for the most part because they're busy with their own lives and can't be bothered by this because they don't feel like it's affecting their everyday lives. Except when the president of the United States is shilling for one company over another, that ends up affecting your everyday life in some way, shape, or form. When he's promoting Apple over any other phone company, okay, how do you think Google feels about that? Google's an American company that has contracts with the military and everything else. How do you think Amazon feels about that? Amazon's an American technology. You know what I mean? You understand, that you can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that. I don't want to live in a country where you're able to do that. The leader of any other country, if they did that, would be brought up on charges, arrested, and jailed. And yet, our guy gets away with it scot-free. Well, I don't have the kind of stock portfolio that Donald Trump has. So if you're able to and have means, please support independent media because we are exclusively user funded. I am not a billionaire. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-v.com/Indie News Network. Those people already have done that. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Over at patreon.com/Indie News Network. That's a monthly subscription. You can also subscribe monthly over on Substack at IndieMediaToday.com or over at the network's newsletter at INNnewsletter.com. Then we've got Indie News Now, name of the show, but it's also a website where you can read 24/7, completely independent, ad-free news, hand aggregated vetted by mostly Indie Media Award honorees, but other publications that I trust and like their content and believe that they're trying to get it right and do get it right most, if not all the time. Okay. Most of the time. Nobody gets it right all the time. Okay. Yes, that's right. You're loyalists to the Raytheon Patreon. That's going to be live next Thursday night. Me and Jesse on American Tradition over on Indie News Network. That'll be on INNnewsletter.com when I stream it live. Okay. The next article we're going to talk about is about intelligence community infiltration, corruption. It's an Indie Media Award honoree, Alan McLeod from Mint Press News. All right, Mint Press just raised like $250,000 on the heels of having their fundraising drive frozen by Indiegogo. Then they switched to their own funding, and they got a couple of big supporters, and now they're over the hump temporarily, but they still need support. Alan published this article this week about Cuba, and I found it really fascinating because, again, not many people talking about this yet. I'm guessing that it will be a short time before they all start talking about it, and maybe I just got to it before others. All right, but he wrote this article, revealed U.S. aid, NED, and Open Society quietly bankroll Cuba's independent media in a push for a regime change. Now, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's actually something that I spoke to Alan about personally in January. That was the last one-on-one that I did. I got to host Alan McLeod, and I asked him about like infiltrating independent media and the corporate media that's LARPing and pseudo infiltrating and calling themselves independent, because independent media is the only source really that's had legitimacy the last 6 years. Since COVID, corporate media just lost all their legitimacy with a lot of people. So what? And you know that Trump allegedly had killed U.S. aid and at least the public funding for U.S. aid. All right, they moved a lot of that into the State Department, and NED was already the regime change arm of CIA. That was not changing really. And then, of course, Open Society, that's Soros. So, amid escalating U.S. aggression toward the Cuban island through a maximum pressure campaign and the threat of military intervention, the United States government has been covertly funding a huge network of Cuban media outlets that claim to be independent in a push for regime change against the independent socialist government. What a surprise. These outlets present themselves as unbiased investigative journalism, but are quietly being financed by Washington through USAID, the NED, which is the National Endowment for Democracy, and the Open Society Foundation, in order to sow discontent across the Caribbean nation, softening it up for a potentially imminent invasion by the Trump administration. Cuba faces some of its worst energy blackouts in history. We've documented that, thanks to the U.S. blockade, which is attempting to strangle the island into submission. As a communist state defying U.S. orders, Cuba has since 1959 been in the crosshairs of Washington, who are attempting to overthrow the government again. Mint Press sheds light on this shady regime change nexus. You know, it's funny. Nobody even really ever mentions the fact that Obama actually did try to reopen ties to Cuba and reopen relations and travel to Cuba. And it was legal to go to Havana for a couple of years. And then Trump took office, shut that all down. Biden never really even explored it. And he maintained a lot of the traditional, I think because he's a boomer, you know, they've had this hard line against Cuba for decades. So he just continued with that. And then Trump came back in, and it's been even worse. Now they go after Diaz-Canel. They're talking still about indicting Raul Castro at 94 years old. Stupid. You'll see. So here we go. Independent journalism brought to you by the State Department. CubaNet is one of the most influential and well-established news outlets covering affairs on the Caribbean island. Founded by anti-government activists in 1994, the site has become the go-to source of information for corporate media, who regularly cite it and present it as an objective and unbiased independent media. Like the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Fox News, LA Times, they all cite CubaNet. CubaNet reporters have written op-eds in major U.S. newspapers, such as USA Today, calling for an immediate change in government on the island. How convenient to the U.S. interests. But CubaNet is not as independent as it seems. You're kidding me. The outlet is bankrolled by the U.S. national security state. Womp, womp. CubaNet has received millions of dollars in funding from USAID and the NED, as well as the Open Society Foundation. One currently active $500,000 USAID grant, for instance, was awarded to CubaNet to, quote, engage on-island young Cubans through objective and uncensored multimedia journalism. That's basically what we do here, but I'm not interested in a USAID grant. While ostensibly of laudable goal, even the grant's own one-sentence description hints that its purpose is to undermine and attack the Cuban government. It states that it will, emphasis added, increase the free flow of information to and from Cuba in order to offset the regime's disinformation campaigns. That's definitely not language that's neutral. Another news organization receiving huge sums of money from Washington is ADN Cuba, literally meaning Cuba's DNA. The outlet has amassed significant following online, boasting over 100,000 subs on YouTube, over 200K on Instagram, and over 1.3 million on Facebook, where it's easier to game the system. It describes itself as, quote, an independent media outlet committed to freedom and democracy in Cuba, unquote. Yet it's actually based in Spain. Oops. And it doesn't seem particularly committed to transparency about its funding. Wow, go figure. What is clear, however, is that ADN Cuba has received millions of dollars from the U.S. national security state. And he's got receipts here, links to foreignassistance.gov, to mronline.com, to articles and specific references. In September 2024, USAID approved a $1.1 million grant to ADN Cuba, a gigantic amount of money for an organization that publishes barely one story per day on its website. This was on top of $1.5 million allocation for the 2022 to 24 period. So now you got $2.6 million floating around on an island where that can go a long way. Indeed, since 2020, ADN Cuba has received in excess of $3 million from USAID alone. This relationship is not disclosed to readers. What? They didn't tell them that they got their money from USAID? Even in stories directly covering USAID funding Cuban media. And they're relegated to the footnotes of obscure U.S. government funding databases by design so that they could try to bury that and nobody finds it. Here's another one. Diario de Cuba. De Cuba is another Spanish-based news outlet that publishes a wide variety of stories, all with one thing in common: a deep aversion to the Cuban government. The BBC describes it and CubaNet as key sources for, quote, impartial news run by journalists who report without censorship and to paint a broader picture on the country's reality. Well, without censorship because they are manufacturing consent. It's the you wouldn't be talking to me if you didn't feel the way you felt. They're being chosen because of the way they report and because of how they feel. And just like CubaNet, Diario de Cuba has received 7-figure funding from Washington, D.C. Because, the Trump administration willingly gives millions of dollars to organizations in Cuba for doing for not doing what they want, right? Between 2016 and 2020, again, while Trump was in office, Diario de Cuba received $1.3 million in USAID cash, almost as much as CubaNet over the same period. This generous funding has allowed it to reach a global audience with over 600,000 followers on Facebook alone. So now we've got the regime change networks. CIA used to directly and secretly sponsor hundreds of media outlets across the world. However, after a series of scandals and more information about its nefarious activities came to public attention, Washington decided to outsource many of its controversial foreign operations to orgs such as the NED and USAID, right? Quote, it would be terrible for democratic groups around the world to be seen as subsidized by the CIA, the said the NED's longtime president. Right? But a lot of what we do today was covertly done 25 years ago by the CIA. That's their co-founder who admitted that to the Washington Post. Under the guise of democracy, promotion, and human rights, the U.S. government channels money to political and social groups across the world in order to maximize its strategic goals, including regime change. Because fuck the people back home, we need the resources handed to us by an installed puppet president of another country. In recent years, the U.S. has used the twin organizations of the NED and USAID to bankroll anti-government protests in Hong Kong, to attempt a color revolution in Belarus, to overthrow the government of Ukraine in 2014. Anybody heard of the Maidan coup? I know people here have. And to organize riots across Iran earlier this year. Also, I reported with Reef, they tried to put a color revolution in Mexico and failed. They tried a color revolution in Iran in 2022 and failed. I think it was Myanmar. They tried a color revolution and earlier this year or last year. I covered with Reef. Again, in Cuba, the NED and USAID played a critical role in organizing a failed uprising against the government in 2021. They don't always win. They have a terrible batting average. For like regime change outfits that are supposedly going to inject a bunch of money in order to change the mindsets of everybody around them so that they are buying off favor in order to get what they want. They're not very effective because half the time they don't accomplish their goals. Anybody ever hear of Juan Guaido? That was another NED, USAID, CIA project that failed, where they tried to overthrow the Maduro government at that point and install a puppet. All right, so here we go. In Cuba, they played a critical role. USAID, in particular, spent millions of dollars funding, organizing, and promoting the San Isidro movement, a collective of musicians and artists and journalists to lead a counter-revolution on the island. A counter-revolution on behalf of the CIA and democracy, quote-unquote, or at least billionaire interests. San Isidro members were at the forefront of a wave of nationwide protests that July. The demonstrations were immediately signal boosted by Western corporate media, top celebrities and U.S. politicians, including President Biden. Netizens were flooded with the AstroTurf SOS Cuba campaign that trended across the internet for days. That was also AstroTurfed and probably paid for. In the end, however, the coordinated efforts of the U.S. failed to convince ordinary Cubans to take to the streets, and the movement quickly petered out. Esteban Rodriguez, a key member of that movement, is a producer at ADN Cuba. So, do you think he might have been involved and given instructions to try to do something? You know, while also having his network being paid millions of dollars by the U.S. in a country that's currently embargoed, but that's under the table in order to foment regime change. When U.S. money is paused, independent media immediately collapses. We saw this in Ukraine too. The importance of U.S. government money to the survival and operations of these outlets was underlined early last year when the Trump admin chose to freeze funding to USAID and the NED. Announcing the decision, Elon Musk, then head of Doge, described USAID in particular as a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Yeah, that's not exactly what they are. Because they were literally trying to isolate Marxists, radical left Marxists. So what do you mean? The effect on Cuban media was immediate. As soon as the money stopped flowing, dozens of organizations faced immediate liquidation. Go figure. CubaNet published an emergency editorial asking readers to make up the shortfall. We're facing an unexpected challenge. The suspension of key funding that sustained part of our work. If you value our work and believe in keeping the truth alive, we ask for your support. And then their director finally admitted that without USAID funds, it will be extremely difficult to continue. Diario de Cuba was in similar dire straits. Its director, Pablo Diaz Espi, noted that aid to independent journalism from the government of the United States has been suspended, which makes our work more difficult, and asking readers to donate. Obviously, I mean, they're basically telling you who was on the take at that point. Because if you can't operate without U.S. government money, well, that means that you're being funded by the U.S. government and doing their bidding. Musk's decision accidentally revealed a sprawling network of over 6,200 reporters and nearly 1,000 outlets worldwide that were quietly being trained, supported, and bankrolled by the CIA front, all under the banner of promoting independent media and freedom of information. You know, I actually talked with Charlie Robinson. It published this past Sunday at Macroaggressions Podcast about the watering down of independent media and like what do you call it when corporate media and the CIA has literally rebranded themselves to glom onto the brand that you've created for authenticity for yourself, and now they're using it to gain authenticity for themselves, but what it's actually doing is watering down what it really is and giving it no authenticity. So it's like when everybody's super, nobody is for the Incredibles, right? Not only that, but he literally outed CIA agents by doing this, which is, again, kind of hilarious. You know, this was a way to take down the deep state, but I don't think it was ever intentional to do it this way. Another supposedly independent Cuban outlet plunged into crisis was El Toque, The Touch. Founded in 2014 and receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from the NED, from the Obama administration, El Toque publishes in Spanish and English and attempts to manipulate the exchange rates in Cuba. Why would they do that? The funding cut hit them badly, with editors announcing they would immediately have to lay off half their staff because the money wasn't coming in, 15 people, and stop working with dozens of freelancers while searching for alternative funding sources. And there's the link to that article. El estornudo, the sneeze, is also generously financed by NED. So can you see that, like, just a few $1 million, 10, 15 million, which is nothing to the budget of the CIA and NED, could blanket an entire island and flood them with what they considered to be independent patriots that were totally doing the bidding of who was funding them. Nuts. Right? In 2021, the endowment awarded the investigative journalism outlet $180,000. It also receives copious amounts of support from Open Society Foundation, although it insists that none of this U.S. money comes with any strings attached or affects its output. Again, we wouldn't be funding you if you didn't say the things that you said. So it's because you don't need to necessarily be told, because by them funding you, they are telling you that this is the kind of reporting they want you to do. While Western media often portray the Cuban media landscape as a David and Goliath fight between plucky independent media facing repression and a sprawling state-sponsored propaganda apparatus, the gigantic sums handed out to these underdogs make them by far and away the best funded outlets on the island. A 2023 Guardian article, for instance, profiled 24-year-old photojournalist Pedro Sosa, who worked for both El Toque and El Estornudo. It presented the pair as offering real reporting over stodgy state media, and journalists as poor and vulnerable truth tellers standing up for freedom and facing a crackdown from the state. Well, first of all, the fact that it appeared in the Guardian should set off red flags in the first place. But then how they're framing this guy as this independent champion positioned by an intel-friendly outlet should definitely have set off red flags. But it also lets slip that working for U.S.-backed media is not as bad a career move as portrayed, and is in fact an extremely lucrative profession. It casually mentions that salaries at El Toque are 10 times that of even most senior journalists working in Cuban state media. So how is that independent? That's corporate funded, alternate state funded. In reality, then, these oppressed free speech warriors are actually some of the richest individuals on the entire island, thanks to, again, the power of the US dollar, which pays them handsomely to produce a constant stream of anti-government news. In the end, the US-backed outlets need not have worried, and US aid and NED funding resumed after some restructuring. As I said, they brought it under the guise of the State Department and then resumed funding all these outlets. Jobs for the boys. All this, however, pales in comparison to the resources the U.S. has dedicated to radio and TV Martí. Founded in 1985 by the Reagan administration, the Miami-based network boasts dozens of full-time employees and receives tens of millions of dollars from D.C. annually. Unlike the rest of the journalism industry, workers at radio and TV Martí enjoy a strong job security and six-figure wages, despite the fact that the Cuban government is able to jam and block many of their broadcasts from reaching Cuba, meaning precious few people consume its content. They don't care. It's a propaganda factory. Since its creation, DC has spent at least $800 million on radio and TV Martí. Now, that's over 4 decades, but still, that's a lot of money for an island that's starving. The outlets profiled make up only a small portion of the network of anti-government media funded by the United States. Most of the recipients of American money remain anonymous, a decision taken in part to hide their identities and preserve their credibility inside Cuba. You mean stop them from getting lynched? The NED considers Cuba a long-standing priority and is currently funding 32 separate projects on the island. You want to talk about trying to undermine another country's leadership? Media-related grants include one $80,000 project titled Strengthening Access to Information, which promises to, quote, enhance access to information and promote critical thinking. The organization will produce daily reporting and analysis across various formats, providing independent perspectives on issues affecting citizens' daily lives, including freedom of expression, public safety, human rights, and other pressing social concerns. How can they do that while they're U.S. government funded? They're not independent. They don't have an independent perspective. Another $115,000 grant titled Expanding Access to Uncensored Media notes that it will promote independent information. The organization will provide narrative journalism on censored topics, conduct investigations, and produce in-depth articles, photo essays, and opinion pieces while strengthening the media's operational capacity. This is gross. 31 of the 32 projects hide the recipient's name and identification, go figure, meaning that those groups working with the CIA cutout organization are generally only ever identified if they advertise this relationship. Or like when U.S. money was temporarily halted last year, they call for help. That's the only way you ever find out. This is under the table money that's completely not disclosed. But then they present themselves as independent. Gross. I'm not even going to say that. Anti-government money are only a small portion of the huge array of groups Washington secretly funds and supports. From musicians and academics to civil society, educational and religious groups, to think tanks, charities, and NGOs, there exists a vast nexus of organizations receiving vast sums of money from the U.S. government. Why are we giving them all this money if we're embargoing them and if we're so opposed to them? Oh, right. It's because we actually want to overturn their government, overthrow their government, install a puppet that will allow us to have complete control over the island, allow our industry to come in and reap the profits from there. That would be my guess. Two of those bodies include the Observatorio Cubano de Derechos Humanos. That's the Cuban Observatory of Human Rights, or OCDH, and lawyers group Cubalex. Both groups produce reports denouncing the Cuban government and are regularly cited as impartial authorities on human rights on the island in Western outlets, again, such as the propaganda factories like the New York Times, CNN, and Washington Post. But what readers are never told is that both organizations are bankrolled by the U.S. national security state. Thanks for playing, you lose again. Records show that U.S. aid has given almost $1.5 million to the OCDH. NED support, meanwhile, was crucial to Cubalex's inception in 2010, and D.C. continues to pay its staff wages to this day. As the company's executive director, Larissa Diversant, said last year, quote, without the support of NED, Cubalex would not have existed. To do the work we do requires resources. For 14 years, NED has been supporting us. Last October, after trying a lot of times, we also achieved a State Department grant. Well, that's because a lot of the USAID stuff was brought under the State Department. So that's why they were able to get a grant at that point. Thus, there is barely a quarter of the anti-government Cuban opposition that has not been reached by U.S. money, either through government organizations such as the NED or USAID, or through institutions such as the Ford Foundation or Open Societies Foundation, which have historically performed a similar role in promoting American interests abroad. There are other CIA cutouts. The Ford Foundation has been known to be working with the CIA for decades. Open Society, by the way, has a $250,000 grant funding a Middle East reporter for Uber Eats News. Look up who they might be. Many of these groups are headquartered in South Florida, where the U.S. government money is helping to subsidize thousands of jobs for the Cuban American community. Also, insane. It's therefore no exaggeration to say that a significant part of Miami's economy is propped by taxpayer money funding counter-revolutionary forces, which is insane. Ironic, considering that conservative Cubans often vehemently object to government welfare programs in both the U.S. and Cuba. Yeah. Now, here we go. In 2010, digital bombardment, a new social media messaging app, Zunzuneo, took Cuba by storm. From nowhere, it went viral, picking up tens of thousands of users, a very large number for the time, on such an internet-sparse island. None of its users, however, were aware that the platform had been secretly created by USAID in order to promote regime change. Sounds like the Shadow app. Their plan was to first provide an excellent service that would capture the market, then slowly drip-feed Cubans' anti-government messaging, and finally direct them to join smart mobs aimed at triggering a color revolution. They just did this in Iran, by the way. In an effort to hide its ownership of the project, the U.S. government held a secret meeting with Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, who still runs Square, by the way, aimed at getting him to invest in the project. It's unclear to what extent, if any, Dorsey helped, as he's declined to speak on the matter. But we also know that he just funded a project about Julian Assange's life to $6 billion man, and has had close ties to the intel community himself. Zunzuneo was abruptly shut down in 2012, perhaps because of the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, which oversees TV and Radio Martí, had already created a new program called Piramideo. Piramideo marketed itself as an app that allowed Cubans to receive world news for free without any censorship. Almost immediately, however, locals reported being deluged with fake news about anti-government protests that never happened. Piramideo was shut down in 2015 after reporting on U.S. government meddling in Cuba caused a scandal and diplomatic embarrassment. Now, again, remember, this is all under the Obama administration. This is bipartisan. This happened under Obama. This happened under Bush. This happened under Trump. This happened under Biden. All these presidencies. It doesn't matter. It is bipartisan. Today, however, it's more like unipartisan. Today, however, with Cubans increasingly using American social media apps, this kind of subterfuge is largely unnecessary as it can be done out in the open. During the 2021 San Isidro protests, apps such as Instagram and Twitter were openly participating in the attempt to overthrow the government, taking no action against a massive boom of clearly fake bot accounts parroting the exact same messages down to the typos and using the same astroturfed hashtag. Twitter's editorial team even placed the protests, which drew barely a few thousand people in the streets nationwide, at the top of its what's happening for over 24 hours, meaning that every user worldwide would be notified. The failed putsch has come to be known as the Bay of Tweets. That's funny. So now we're talking about the intel community's unending war on Cuba. In October, for the 33rd consecutive year, the UN voted overwhelmingly to call for an end to the American blockade against Cuba, 165-7. You can imagine who's voting on our behalf. This economic war was established by the Eisenhower administration in response to the Cuban Revolution of 1959, which overthrew the U.S.-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista. Just remember, we only want dictatorships. That was not promoting democracy. These illegal, unilateral, coercive measures, which an internal U.S. government memo states are designed to decrease monetary and real wages, to bring about hunger, desperation, and overthrow of government, has cost Cuba billions every year and severely impede its development. Now, not every country abides by the sanctions, but U.S. sanctions put a massive damper on the island's ability to grow. The U.S. attempted to invade Cuba in 1961 and brought the world to the brink of annihilation during the subsequent Cuban Missile Crisis. There was a good propaganda movie made called 13 Days about that. It reportedly attempted to kill its leader, Fidel Castro, hundreds of times and carried out waves of terror attacks against the country using biological weapons on the island. Successive administrations continued the economic war against Cuba, which was ramped up after the fall of the Soviet Union. But the Trump State Department, run by Cuban-American Marco Rubio, has taken it to a new level, declaring the island to be one of its top priorities. But that's also because they want to dominate this entire hemisphere. It's part of the North American technate. Trump himself has declared that Cuba is next on the list of countries being targeted for regime change. We may stop by Cuba after we're finished with Iran, he said last month. In response, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel said that his country was ready to repel any U.S. invasion, as it did during the Bay of Pigs, stating, quote, "The moment is extremely challenging and calls upon us once again, as on April 16, 1961, to be ready to confront serious threats, including military aggression. We don't want it, but it's our duty to prepare to avoid it, and if it becomes inevitable, to defeat it." It would be really difficult to see them do that, but I'm hopeful that they might have a fighting chance because that is their country. They're doing nothing to cause this. This is complete antagonization by the Trump administration. It's in this context that the U.S. government's funding of a vast array of media outlets targeting Cuba should be seen. The media attack is just one facet of Washington's multi-pronged approach to regime change. Many of the organizations profiled here publish in English, and nearly all are used as supposedly credible sources of information on Cuba for Western corporate media, meaning that the State Department narratives are laundered into the public consciousness through this network and purported to be independent. It's just like Van Jones and Anna Kasparian and Jeremy Scahill and Taylor Lorenz pushing the same kind of narratives, corporate media, duopoly nonsense narratives pushed out through these independent outlets. They're doing the same thing in Cuba, and most people haven't caught up and figured it out yet. Many Cubans and Americans are completely unaware that their news about the island comes largely through a matrix of shady outlets quietly funded by the U.S. national security state via the NED and USAID. Their purpose is to keep the flow of negative stories in order to soften up the public into accepting regime change on the island when they decide to invade. After all, in war, truth is always the first casualty. Man, I love Alan McLeod. He's so fucking good. That was a deep dive. That's a good history. That's an Indie Media Award honoree. IndieMediaAwards.substack.com. Then /Alan-MACLEOD, Alan McLeod. And you can get all his links. I created a page for each one of these honorees. There's also one for /P/MintPress-News. Because Mint Press News is also an honoree. Anyway, awesome article, man. Really insightful. A lot of information in there. How's everybody doing? Must have been by subconscious. What are you doing early? Okay. So, again, all these outlets funded by USAID and NED. The same thing happened in Ukraine, and most of them collapsed within months. And then were refunded, possibly. I don't know if they actually were or not, because the Trump administration is not as big a fan of those outlets, and I don't know if they even care about the propaganda over there anymore. Well, Mint Press is an independent outlet, user-funded. So are we. We are not USAID and NED supported, but in any way, shape, or form. Talking Wombat, who's in the top left corner because they were one of the first supporters of this network, Mint Press News is a Mint source of news. That's true and accurate. I'm a big fan. That was a great article. But please support independent media. Ways to do that: Cash App, $ Indie News Network, codehv.com/Indie News Network, at paypal.me/Indie News Network, patreon.com/Indie News Network. You know, we've got to have a bunch of different sources of funding so we can spread it around a little bit. Everybody wants to contribute in a different way. We want to try to meet you where you're at. Over on Substack, if you want to subscribe, you can do that at IndieMediaToday.com or at INNNewsletter.com. And then, of course, we have our website, IndieNewsNow.com. I named the show Indie News Now Live because we post stories and articles that are featured and included and linked at IndieNewsNow.com. You can also access merch there and get to the Shandamasta Fuck Cancer collection, or buy yourself a We Deserve Better PsyOps t-shirt. Or you can also go to, you can drop us a tip to our Stripe link as well over there. And you can watch live whenever INN is live. We do that too. All right. Hi, everybody. All right. Good to see everybody over on Substack joining. Lucy Fur, thanks for subscribing over at INN Newsletter this week. Yes, I do pay attention to all the individuals that do sign up. Like, I care about this stuff. And because we're not that big, I still see each individual thing and can look at it and acknowledge it and appreciate it. And that means something to me. So thank you. Shout out to my brother Odds the Boomer if he's listening and watching. Shout out to Steve Gill, a.k.a. Ghost Art over on. And then, of course, he's Operation Rolling Blackouts over on Twitter as well. So go support and go follow my brothers over there. Okay, we're going to get into a big fuck Israel segment. This is going to run long tonight, I'm telling you now. We're probably going to go till almost 1. We're going to go close to 3 hours because I have a really long lightning round stuff after that to cover too. But we're going to get started with our fuck Israel segment. This is insane. A British woman was stopped by police at a train station and told she was under investigation after a passenger on said train reported feeling uncomfortable and alleged that she had made comments referencing the Holocaust. Police said they had received a text message alleging she had denied the Holocaust. A text message. They hadn't heard it. They had no evidence. And subsequently tracked her down and told her she was being investigated for a racially aggravated public order offense. The woman, Fiona Rose Diamond, is an activist with anti-Zionist views. She said she was expressing political views about the political ideology Zionism. We're going to hear from her in a minute. She said she had just returned from an oncology appointment in London when she was met by British Transport Police at the station. She also said she believed the timing and circumstances were not a coincidence. The activist argued that anti-Zionism is increasingly being deliberately conflated with anti-Semitism in order to silence criticism of Israel and suppress dissenting political views in Britain. I guess they're behind us here because they've been doing that for years here already. Quote, I am more than entitled to hold these beliefs about a political ideology, she says, adding that her grandfather was Jewish. Okay, they don't care that the anti-Zionists are Jews because they just call you a capo or an Uncle Tom or a self-hater like me, like I am. The incident, of course, sparked renewed debate over free speech in the UK. So let's watch this video real quick. It's 2.5 minutes.
Obviously, it's going to look at the activist. Could we take some details from you? Obviously, it's going to look at this incident.
So you telling me what's been said? What did the text message say?
So we've been informed by a member of public on that train.
Right.
Described yourself and said that you allegedly made reference to the Holocaust. So obviously we it's made him feel uncomfortable.
Made what reference have you? Is there what's specific about what I've said? I made reference to the Holocaust. So on the train, someone has said that I've made an offensive comment that's made reference to the Holocaust.
Denying the Holocaust is what the allegation.
Denying the Holocaust. Okay.
Obviously, we're going to be looking at this matter.
Yeah.
As I arrived at my train station, I was met by the British Transport Police off the train. And I could see they were looking at me up and down as if they were trying to identify me. As you know, I've had interactions with the police and I'm aware of, I know the police. And they told me that they had received a text message from a passenger on the train, and I am being investigated now for alleged racially aggravated public order offence. Specifically, I'm being accused of Holocaust denial. I do not believe in coincidences. I do not think that this is random. I am not ashamed about my anti-Zionist beliefs. I am more than entitled to hold beliefs about a political ideology, and I'm more than entitled to express those beliefs and opinions. In fact, they're actually protected philosophical belief under the Equality Act 2010. I can criticise a nationalist political ideology. I can hold opinions and express those opinions, but I'm also very aware of people being persecuted for saying certain things. So I'm being accused of being anti-Semitic and being a Holocaust denier specifically. That was repeated to me several times.
You know, I don't know if necessarily people are denying that the Holocaust happened. Maybe they're denying the numbers of the Holocaust, which I've seen plenty of. And there's a lot of questions even between the German records, and Germans kept meticulous records. And there are questions, legitimate questions, as a Jew, that this 6 million number has been thrown around for years and was never really validated, that there were never really 6 million Jews in all of Germany when there are 16 million Jews right now in the entire world. Again, I'm not anti-Semitic. I am an American Jew. It's crazy that I even have to validate that. But that's where we're starting, is in the UK, persecuting an activist. Now, Fiona Rose Diamond, by the way, has a Substack. She has been fighting against the government in a lot of ways. Stop calling death a distraction. Okay, truth entered the courtroom and narrative was put on trial. She's been talking about under 16's social media ban. So she's been active in speaking out against the government. They have reason to want to target her. She might have said something to make somebody uncomfortable on a train. But since when can they do that? Just for public speech. I thought that this was a free country. Now, they have to, I guess, prove and have it recorded that she denied that there was even a Holocaust. That it's a crazy accusation to begin with. It's one that's almost impossible to substantiate and prove. But what it's done is caused this whole major stir and problem. But worse was what happened, of course, with the New York Times. So I'm going to bring the article first from our friend and INN co-founder, The Dissident. While Zionists deny raping Palestinians in English, they argue for the right to rape in Hebrew. Now, this is a little bit of a different discussion, but this is still in the wake of protesting the New York Times. And that's what happened. So Nick Kristof published an article that cited multiple reports that we've been reporting for months, maybe even more than a year, that the IDF had been sexually torturing Palestinians, women, children, men, using objects and using dogs. And that made people very upset. And a lot of people, Zionists, were protesting to have Nicholas Kristof fired, calling the New York Times anti-Semitic because they reported on actual facts that the Israeli TV admits themselves they do and have fought for the right to do. But of course, Americans are in denial about what actually is Israel. They've been propagandized, and they're also projecting what they want to be true versus what is actually true. So, over the course of the ongoing Israeli genocide in Gaza, pro-Israel Zionists have two different narratives. One said in English, the other said in Hebrew. The narrative said in English was that Israel wasn't killing Palestinian civilians and they were being used as human shields. In Hebrew, however, Israeli Zionists, including top-level political and military officials, openly boasted about killing Palestinian civilians, repeatedly saying that there are no innocents in Gaza, and referring to the Palestinians as the Amalek, a reference to the Hebrew Bible verse calling to, quote, attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. And they've literally done that in Gaza. And now they're doing it in Lebanon. No case better underscores this than the case of Israel's mass rape of Palestinian detainees. Again, this was clearly reported. In English, Zionists and the Israeli government are attempting to deny the recent New York Times article reporting on Israel's mass rape of Palestinian detainees in torture dungeons, labeling the report as, quote unquote, blood libel. There's a link to the article here. There's also a link to Israel MF, what is this? The minister, the foreign ministry, calling it blood libel. However, in the Hebrew language media and parliament, the use of mass rape against Palestinian detainees is widely acknowledged and even debated as a legitimate tactic. Again, nothing that we haven't covered extensively for a long time. The fact that we have to cover this again because the fuck-all New York Times decided they wanted to get it half right is infuriating. In August 2024, footage was leaked from State Taman, the most brutal and barbaric of Israel's torture dungeons, showing a glimpse into the routine rape and sexual violence that Palestinian detainees face there. Remember, that footage was leaked by one of their prosecutors who had a conscience about it, and then she was arrested and prosecuted herself for leaking the tape. She was going to prosecute the people for gang raping, and they were let off. The harrowing video portrayed Israeli soldiers gang raping a Palestinian man. A doctor who examined the victim found that he had a stab wound in the anus. Oh my God. And yet when IDF gang rapists were detained after the video was leaked, much of Israel's radicalized public and media defended them and their quote-unquote right to rape. That's what was going on in front of the New York Times. They don't realize that they were defending the same thing? When the soldiers were detained for acts of sodomy, Israelis held massive right-to-rape rallies demanding the soldiers be released. And that's probably this video right here, which I can't show because it's Al Jazeera. They'll copyright claim me. But you can find it on Twitter. Then Al Jazeera reported on that. The right to rape the outlet noted was also defended by Bezalel Smotrich, who also was in the news again this week, and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. Times of Israel also noted that right-wing politicians, including Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu and Zvi Sukkot of the Religious Zionism Party, fueled and participated in those chaotic demonstrations in support of gang rape. Disgusting. Following this, the main suspect behind the on-video gang rape in State Haman, Mayor Ben Shitrit, literally Shitrit, went public and then became a celebrity on Israeli TV. They know he did it. He admits doing it, and he has no consequences. Again, we also, Ramondo Weiss reported, and as did we in 2024, Israeli right-leaning Channel 14 aired a 10-minute interview with one of the suspects in the gang rape case. He was masked, in uniform, had a gun slung across his shoulder, adding, 2 days later, he went public and revealed his identity in a video as Meir Ben Shitrit. Anyway, that's the rapist. Proud rapist. So again, remember that they've been telling their people that they're doing this, but then the New York Times publishes it, and the rest of the American Zionist movement loses their minds because they've never heard this before. Here's other ones. I refuse to be the grandfather who tells my children one day that we had a fraternal war because of a Hamas man's. Oh, this was a whole thing about a comedian. Popular comedians in Israel have openly made jokes about the rape of Palestinians. Not going to repeat them. While Zionists deny the fact that Israeli authorities routinely rape Palestinians in detention centers in English, they acknowledge and celebrate it in Hebrew. That was why I brought this article from The Dissident. Support him, the 307.substack.com. Now I want to go to another friend of the show, Zay Squirrel. What happened over the last few days is pretty amazing. The Israeli regime knew Nick Kristof was going to publish this New York Times piece on their actual systematic rape of Palestinians, including children, and the use of dogs to rape. So they fabricated a new report, the most insane one yet, copy-pasted together by a proven fraud that repeats all the already debunked falsehoods and relies entirely on known proven hoaxers. And they actually got the New York Times, BBC, CNN, AP, and Reuters to launder it for them a day after the Kristof piece came out to bury it. They own the media class completely. Then he talked about the New York Times' Isabel Kirshner. There's a whole article about her that I don't want to read. All right, put out a piece laundering this rape hoax report from a known proven fraud that is so insane, so absolutely deranged that it makes their Screams Without Words piece look like a masterpiece of investigative journalism. It's nuts. The only one that briefly and vaguely acknowledges that critics have challenged the hoaxer fraud who fabricated the deranged report is the Associated Press, without, of course, providing any details. No one at any of the other outlets even bothered to do basic fact-checking. They just copy-pasted what the Israel lobby sent over and hit publish. And these are the same Zionist cunts who got activated to launder this report. They were the ones crying about Kristof not being a real reporter and his piece lacking evidence. It's just astonishing how depraved and shameless these scum are. And he ain't done. By the way, she ain't done. You know what Zionists are saying? Their new line is that the Christoph piece was deliberately published a day before their new report came out as a way to bury that. LOL. They inverted reality. They Israeled the whole thing. It really is true that every genocidal Zionist cunt accusation is a confession. Given that the Israeli regime and Zionists admit that this new report has been laying around since last year, it proves they've been holding on to it as a break-in case of emergency propaganda slop to send to their assets at all the propaganda outlets to launder, and the Christoph piece was the emergency. Also, as Zay Squirrel notes in that thread, as this copy-pasted report was sitting in Levy's Google Docs, the Israeli regime had already put out another hoax report via official rape hoaxer Kadari, and hers did not include claims that are in this whopper, even though they had already been put out in tabloid pieces. So the two actually debunk each other, alongside the fact that Kadari publicly called out Levy for being a grifter, fraud, liar, like their own people. Let them fight. All these clowns are fighting amongst themselves. And the Christoph piece also laundered propaganda talking points on behalf of Israel as well. So I decided to just remind people, let's put this New York Times article about the IDF rape prisons in context. They are the most Zionist American newspaper. If they're reporting this, there's a reason. The New York Times commitment to Zionism begins with its staff. That's a segment that I did with Reef back in last summer that reported on just how many people at the New York Times had direct ties to Israel, the IDF, or had lived in Israel. Okay, then we have reminder, and I want to put this on the record, no Israeli women were targeted by Hamas on October 7th. 0. According to UN Office of the Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, quote, the mission team, specifically the forensic pathologist and the digital analyst, reviewed over 5,000 photos, around 50 hours, and several audio files of footage of the attacks. In the medico-legal assessment of available photos and videos, no tangible indications of rape could be identified. The digital evidence discovered during independent open source review appeared authentic and unmanipulated. While the mission team reviewed extensive digital material depicting a range of egregious violations, no digital evidence specifically depicting acts of sexual violence was ever found in open sources. That's from the UN. And oh yeah, here's another one from Haaretz. Beyond this, from inquiries put to 3 bodies in the defensive establishment by Haaretz, it emerges that intelligence material collected by the police and the intel bodies, including footage from the terrorist body cams, does not contain any visual documentation of any acts of rape themselves. They don't have it anywhere. They have no evidence of this. They just continually claim it, screech it, make it up. It did not happen. They cannot give you one name. Fuck Israel. Now I go to another Indie Media Award honoree, Declassified UK. Another one that tied to this story, because this has been reported and now is out there as known knowledge. How is it that sexual abuse of Palestinians isn't forcing a reckoning for the British government? Now they are actively funding known war crimes. How is nobody prosecuting their government? Israeli soldiers and settlers are using sexualized violence to displace Palestinians, a new report finds. Britain should pull every lever available to stop this, because that's allegedly what their mandate is, right? So this is an article from Anne-Marie Simpson over at Declassified UK. I highly encourage you to read this article. This is a little bit long, so I'm not going to go through this one. All right, we're going to start on a little bit early on the lightning rounding stuff. Next, I do want to play this. All right. This is insane. And this is where Lila Hegazi, I've played videos of hers before. She was actually on the Gaza flotilla. She's a musician. She plays the piano and she's a singer. I think she's gorgeous. I love her. She's Egyptian, American, Italian. And she does this little character where she plays Lisa Marie instead of Lila. And she talks with a little bit of a Staten Island accent. Let me tell you, motherfucker, something this. Very funny, very cute. Love her. So check this out. She's talking specifically here about language.
This morning, and it made me want to talk about how insane it is when the right-wing media uses the words anti-Israel and never pro-Palestine, because they literally refuse to acknowledge that Palestine is a place, that Palestinians are a people, and that their rights matter. And just to be clear, we are anti-Israel, because why the fuck wouldn't you be anti an apartheid state? But this choice of language is so intentional because the word anti always sounds bad, right? And this is the way that we kind of manipulate minds. When we say pro-Palestine, it makes it sound like, oh, you could be for something that's actually good. Or, you know, maybe there isn't really an association either way. But the choice to use the words anti-Israel is so intentional. It's part of the erasure of the Palestinian people in our media. I saw this morning. And
so language matters. And that's her point, is that even in the way that they describe an activist or a professor anti-Israel, all of a sudden that's a smear to a lot of people. And anti has a negative connotation because they want that to have a negative they want you to have a negative feeling toward them, because the campus protests were actually anti-genocide campus protests, and they were in the right. Okay. Now, here we go. Jake Sullivan. You remember him? He was our national security advisor to Joe Biden. Okay. He had some kind of an interview speech on stage this week, and this clown, I woke up every morning and went to sleep every night thinking about what we could do to try to alleviate the suffering. Gaslighting. Not once did he think about ending weapons shipments as a way to end the suffering. Fuck Jake Sullivan and fuck anyone who believes this nonsense. So here's Jake Sullivan on Gaza. 47 seconds. Pause. Let's blow this up. Go back and start listening to his propaganda bullshit.
And I have said many times before that too many innocent people died in Gaza as a result of Israel's military operations.
No,
I've
our
also
weapons
said
funding.
That genocide, from my perspective, requires actually an intent to do the destruction and not to fight a terrorist foe while conducting operations in a way that killed too many civilians. So, on a moral basis,
mental gymnastics.
I woke up every morning and went to sleep every night thinking about what we could do to try to alleviate the suffering and reduce the length of the war and get to a ceasefire. We ultimately got to a ceasefire. And
gaslighting, motherfucker. We never got to a ceasefire. Israel never ceased firing for one fucking day, you lying scumbag. Fuck this guy. Fuck the Biden administration. And fuck the Trump administration for allowing it to continue. Because nobody was stopping it. Now, this is a little bit of a fun one, and it's not really fun, because what we find out is that everybody's heard this annoying radio and TV commercial, 1877 thrift for Jew. It's funny, my kids heard, I was telling my kids this story and trying to spin it nicely so that it doesn't sound as insidious as it actually is. But it's really fucking bad. Everybody's heard this 1877 Cars for Kids commercial. And this is a story that's been floating around for years already. This is not a new story. I'm going to show how this wasn't. But a new development happened this week. Cars for Kids has now been banned from advertising in California, as it has been deemed deceptive by a judge. Why? For helping exclusively Orthodox Jewish kids in the New York and New Jersey areas, despite having 8-year-old actors of all races singing their jingle. So it's deceptive advertising, and let's find out a little bit more about exactly what this is. Cars for Kids COO SD Landau testified that the charity's primary function was to fund URA. What's URA? URA is a foundation dedicated to Jewish heritage summer camps in New Jersey and New York, per the court order. She also said that while 25% of the charity's revenue comes from California, there are no programs in the state that benefit from the Cars for Kids beyond a backpack drive characterized as a branding exercise. So basically, if you donate a car, we'll give you a backpack. Or maybe they gave out backpacks to schools here or there. Kids in need aren't even really the target of the organization's financial efforts. This is what's so insidious. Instead, the money goes to 17 and 18-year-olds seeking gap year trips to Israel and their families. Landau, the COO, testified that $16.5 million even went to purchasing a building in Israel in 2022, and $437,000 was spent on Middle East outreach, PR, propaganda, bribery, who the hell knows what. And California is not the only place that's looking into this now. Canada also is looking into this, apparently. This is gross. So here we go. Ali Abunimah, Indie Media Award honoree from the Electronic Intifada, also Indie Media Award honoree. All right. For years, charity Cars for Kids misled people that it raises money for needy children in the U.S., when in fact the money went to a pro-Israel group using it to send not so needy Jewish youth to the Zionist genocide colony on indoctrination junkets and bought a $16 million building there. So he includes receipts and screen caps from a New York Times article that documents all of this week. New York Times not doing so great with the Zionists by having to report the truth. I know you're going to think this sounds fake, but the mascot of URA, the Jewish group whose Israel junkets are funded by this fucking outlet, by this fake charity, is an anthropomorphic stack of money named Five-ish. Not four-ish, five-ish. Gross. It's literally a $5 bill. Here's Five-ish in an official video, which I'm not going to play. And here's Eve Engler, who's a Canadian independent journalist. The Cars for Kids scandal comes at a difficult time for the genocide lobby and boosts rapidly growing efforts to curtail Canada's most important contribution to Palestinian dispossession. Wow. Okay, so now they're going to stop tax subsidies as well for that. Good. Finally, where's Steve's thing? There was a Steve post in there somewhere about, I know you're, where's the thing? Oh, here, I got more. So Al Jazeera Plus, a U.S. children's charity, has quietly been funneling millions of dollars to a religious org that funds free trips to Israel. The charity Cars for Kids is well known across the U.S. for its catchy, aka annoying, jingle that encourages listeners to donate their cars to help children in need. So my kids called it 1877 Scam for Kids. I call it 1877 Scam for Jews, because that's what this is. A judge in California recently barred the jingle, saying it implied donations went to children of all backgrounds. Instead, Cars for Kids was sending $45 million a year to the religious nonprofit URA. They were getting Americans to give out cars, boats, RVs, any form of transportation, and then donating it and turning that money into nonprofit money, laundering it, and sending it out of the country. Isn't that nice? URA is an Orthodox Jewish organization that organizes summer camps and sends young adults on free trips to Israel. That is not just Zionist. That's a Zionist Jewish organization. They're not sending Catholic kids. They're not sending Muslim kids. Right? It also used $16.5 million to buy a property there. Cars for Kids is now facing a federal class action lawsuit alleging that the organization fraudulently and intentionally misled donors. And you can be sure that they'll buy off the Trump administration to make that lawsuit disappear. And if it's not the Trump administration, it'll be the next administration. That lawsuit will not go forward. They will get away with it, sadly. Here's Steve. We told you about this over 3 years ago on AM Wake Up. We showed you how the Cars for Kids jingle was a Hebrew folk song about summoning the Antichrist. The song is called Kinderlach. Nice to see California doing something other than taxing us into early heart failure. I knew I hated that song for a reason. Yep. Watch AM Wake Up, folks. That's one of the reasons why we co-host it on INN. Fuck Israel. Now we get into the, of course, destruction, genocide, and some recent pictures have come out. Professor Asal Rod sharing Omar Hamad's post that not a single stone remains standing, nor a tree, nor a human being. Israel has completely annihilated his town, Beit Hanun. Those are former streets. Those are former buildings. Those are former schools. And they're literally just foundations and husks, and not one building is left. That's not genocide, Jake Sullivan? If that's not genocide, when they murdered millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, mostly of which are children, how is that not genocide? What do you call that? That's not a military operation to get rid of terrorists. Israel are the terrorists. Fuck Israel. Another Asal Rod tweet. They're not trying to stop the crimes. They're trying to stop the social media posts so there'll be less evidence of them. She's citing a Times of Israel article stating, the headline says, the IDF struggles to throttle endless feed of soldiers posting misdeeds on social media. Troops keep reporting recording their own misconduct, including smashing a statue of Jesus in Lebanon, but the army claims progress in curbing posts that fuel international criticism and risk operational security. They don't want to stop the behavior. They want to stop the posting on social media. Fuck Israel. Here we go. Israel is wiping out entire villages in Lebanon, violating Security Council Resolution SCR 1701, ceasefire agreement, and international law with absolutely no consequences. As per usual, this is yet another war crime, and the International Criminal Court remains silent. Mohammed Safa, remember, is the UN delegate to Palestine who had to resign because he could not effectively do his job. And we have Ryan at TLAV. If you're not subscribed and following Ryan at TLA Vagabond on Twitter, do so and share his account because he's heavily suppressed. This is a picture overhead of everything gone and in a husk and no people there and nothing left standing and inhabitable. That's the Israel model. Disgusting. Worse. Another Indie Media Award honoree, Andy Worthington, who usually reports on Gitmo, on Guantanamo, but he also reports on what's happening in Gaza and Israel via Hassan al-Rabi on X. Hassan in Gaza in 2023 and Gaza in 2026. This is what genocide looks like. This is not an AI photo. This is literally the same exact piece of land 3 years apart after U.S., British, and Israeli bombing and the rest of the world turning a blind eye. Displacement, destruction, devastation. And Jared Kushner is going to come in with his investors, bulldoze this entire fucking area, and start over. One of the most terrifying images in history, a transformation from life to death. Finally, I don't even know if this is finally. I got more. Guy Christensen, we've talked about him before. He's also targeted heavily by the Israel lobby for speaking out on TikTok and other platforms against Israel and against genocide. Here's what he had to say about Rafah.
Remember, all eyes on Rafah. A plea to the world, demanding, begging the Biden regime to draw a red line with Israel, stop them from going into Rafah in South Gaza, where 1.4 million Palestinians were taking refuge under this genocide. This is Rafah today. There is not a single building standing. There's no people there. It's gone, bombed, bulldozed by Israel afterwards. Erasure of a civilization, a city that stood for 3,500 years. Before the genocide, Rafah was home to 275,000 Palestinian people. And when Israel designated Rafah one of the only safe zones, people all over Gaza fled there, took refuge in tents wherever they could. And now they've made it impossible for Palestinians to live there ever again. Not only is it erased from the map, but it is poisoned with the bombardment and all the chemical weapons they've used against the Palestinians. I will never forgive our leaders in the United States for doing this. The Democrat Party, the Biden regime, Kamala Harris. They did not draw a single red line for Israel, and this is where we are today. Where half of Gaza is entirely ethnically cleansed, in control of Israel, and now Donald Trump and Netanyahu are on the board of peace, cutting it up for their ring of billionaires who are going to reap massive profits. What happened to Rafah is still happening to the rest of Gaza. My heart hurts so bad, guys. I hate this. It's just a scar on our humanity. There's no way the world isn't crying out right now. There is no ceasefire. The genocide is ongoing. Israel has bombed Gaza every single day of this ceasefire. They've stolen land and terrorized Palestinian communities every single day in the occupied West Bank. This is the work of Zionism. Zionism must fall. Zionism is the movement that created the settler colony of Israel. You can't have neighbors next to a settler colonial project. Because what settler colonialism does is erase a culture, a civilization, an indigenous people already there to make room to replace it with a new civilization. So all the neighbors in the Middle East, the Palestinians, the Jordanians, the Lebanese, Syrians, the Egyptians, are at risk of them too being erased and replaced. And this is not conjecture. Israel has just announced, their defense minister said that they intend to permanently occupy parts of Syria, Lebanon, West Bank forever. Military occupation. They're part of Palestine. Free Palestine. Mourn Rafah. Keep the Palestinians in your hearts and keep fighting. Thank you.
Kid's eloquent as hell, I gotta say. I don't know if somebody's coached him up, but he's phenomenal. Like, your favorite guy, substack.com/@yourfavoriteguy, @Guy Christensen _ on Twitter. But he's also on, of course, Upscrolled. He's one of the people behind Upscrolled, apparently. Fuck Israel. All right. I guess that was the end of my Fuck Israel segment. That's good, because I got a bunch more I got to get to. But in the meantime, thank you, everyone, for sticking with me through that. I know a lot of that is heavy material, and but we have to report on it, because not enough people do. And not enough people show those images. And it's heartbreaking, and it's frustrating, and we can't really do very much about it, but we have to acknowledge that it's happening, because otherwise the propagandists win, and we can't allow that to happen. So support independent media, support channels like this that'll show stuff like this. The ways to do that are Cash App, $ Indie News Network at codeshfee.com/Indie News Network. That'll pop something up on screen. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Monthly, you can subscribe at patreon.com/Indie News Network, or over on Substack at indiemediatoday.com or at INNnewsletter.com. And then you can also tip the network one time at our website, IndieNewsNow.com, which is also a news aggregator site, completely free, neutral, and unbiased, with no advertisers or sponsors. And it's a 24/7 RSS unfiltered feed of over 100 different sources. You can also get to our merch store from there, and you can pick up a t-shirt, sticker, hoodie, a beanie, etc. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Isn't there a bill in front of Congress to ban anti-Semitic speech? I'm not sure if there is one now. A couple of them have been voted down already. Juan Guaido, yeah, the highly acclaimed populist, grand, high, exalted, mystic ruler of Venezuela. Well, then they thought it was going to be Maria Corina Machado, but they decided to let Delcy Rodriguez, be their leader in the meantime, while they position to put a permanent puppet in place that will be more friendly to U.S. interests. But as long as she just steps back and allows them to do whatever they want, they're going to keep doing it. Okay, so now I've got like a massive 10-story lightning round. I'm going to see how long it takes me to get through this. I'm going to mostly show the headlines here and just speak to a very high level on each one of these articles. They're all really important. And this is because it's been 12 days since my last show that I've seen so much come across. And when I see an article that I thought I might want to put on the show, I drop it into a folder. And after going through my folder, I'm like, oh my God, I have a massive list here. So in order to include it all, and instead of publishing a separate post with a few of these that didn't make the show, I figure I'll put it in the show and let's do that. So we'll start by one of my favorite independent outlets that is not an Indie Media Award honoree, but if we were still creating new awards, would definitely get one. That's Sludge. That's David Moore and Donnie Donald. I can't think of his last name. Donnie on Twitter. Netflix got a $2.8 billion windfall and then raised prices. Wait, what? Yeah. What happened? So forget about Elizabeth Warren. All right. The timing of the price hikes undermines the streaming services argument that it doesn't hold monopoly power. So what happened specifically? All right. Netflix spent months earlier. Let's go back. Telling that regulators and lawmakers that it wasn't a monopoly. The streaming giant was seeking approval for a planned $72 billion acquisition of parts of Warner Brothers Discovery, and executives like CEO Ted Sarandos testified that Netflix was a peer of free video services like YouTube and TikTok, part of a sprawling online video market. He argued that the merger, which by adding HBO Max would give Netflix control of nearly half the global subscription streaming market, would be pro-consumer. Netflix got outbid in the deal by Skydance, then collected a $2.8 billion breakup fee just for committing to buy it, and the other side walking away from the deal. They got $2.8 billion handed to them for nothing. And then they raised subscription prices anyway. Fuck those guys. If you have Netflix, just cancel it. Okay. So that's number one. Sludge. Readsludge.com. Independent funded outlet. Love those guys. Next. This is from an organization called the Disinformation Chronicle by Paul D. Thacker. And this is also a deep dive expose, a long article talking about the UNC, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, biodefense contract racket, and a guy by the name of Ralph Barrick. DLA Piper lobbyists and corrupt journalists have been co-opted to distract public from questioning U.S. virus experiments that likely started the COVID pandemic. All right. Now, this guy is going to retire, so he's getting lauded with all kinds of stuff. So basically what ends up happening here is that North Carolina Senator Richard Burr has been funneling money via his office and advocating for the UNC to be getting research grants and money for infectious disease research. All right. And this was the guy who also kind of pushed onto Wuhan Institute of Virology. Right. As I reported last month for Real Clear Investigations, the NIH removed UNC virologist Ralph Barrick from all his NIH grants, and UNC put him on administrative leave. This all took place last year, but remained hidden until this person exposed it in a sprawling investigation that delved into Barrick's career, his past lobbying efforts of the federal government to keep taxpayer money pouring into his UNC lab, and his manipulations of public opinion to shut down speculation that the pandemic started because of dangerous virus research that he pioneered in collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Unbelievable. So follow this article. I'll link to this in the description afterwards. Next article, another, this is wild. This one really pissed me off. I'm going to read this whole one. The rise and fall of an AI-driven local news outlet in South Florida. I started reading this to Reef yesterday. This is by a woman named Kate Payne for the Florida Trib. So what is this? The Tributary. This is unreal. Reported in partnership with Question Everything from KCRW and Placement Theory. South Florida journalist Sofia Delgado was having a great year. Let me see if I can do this in reader mode. That will be better. There we go. Reporters at the news outlet she helped launch a few months ago, the South Florida Standard, have been regularly publishing 3 stories a day, every day of the week, including weekends, with articles ranging from a story detailing the Florida legislature's budget breakdown to federal healthcare workers quitting rather than taking mandatory assignments at Gitmo, to revelations that deaths at state mental hospitals were linked to systemic neglect. Born and raised in Hialeah, the bilingual editor-in-chief and mother of 2, and her team even published 4 stories on Easter Sunday. How impressive! It would be impressive and grueling, an impressive and grueling output from many local news outlets in this area of shrinking newsroom budgets. If it were real. Wait, what? Delgado and other local journalists identified as staff of the South Florida Standard are creations of artificial intelligence, complete with fake headshots and made-up biographies peppered with South Florida cliches, their bylines plastered on articles that were lifted from actual news outlets, recycled through AI, and republished. Admins behind the site say they didn't intend to plagiarize. They just did. By and large, the people identified as the outlet's reporters have virtually no other professional history or digital footprint outside of that site, apart from a smattering of social media profiles created in early 2026 that have no posts and no followers, completely bot-driven. Notable exceptions include 2 reporters, quote-unquote, who share the same names as people accused of convicted of fraud or conspiracy in recent years. Criminals. After the Florida Trib started asking questions about the South Florida Standard and its purported journalists, administrators of the site began tinkering with its contents and removing staff bios before taking the site offline entirely. Previous versions of the site remain available on the Internet Archive. And if you think this is the only one, think again. A digital mirage masquerading as local news, the South Florida Standard underscores just how easy it's become to corrupt one of the country's core institutions, independent journalism. We talked about that earlier with Alan McLeod and USAID and NED funding in Cuba. At a time when trust in the media has eroded to a historic low, sham news sites like this one are increasingly common in Florida and across the country, a dangerous development for American democracy, experts told the Florida Trib. Now remember that there's also going to be a tremendous amount of Israel lobby money flooding in for propaganda through Brad Parscale and his company and other cutouts, they could be creating outlets like this too and play whack-a-mole. So figure, have it up there, create propaganda until you're caught, shut it down, move across the street. This is Boiler Room. The search to find out who was behind the mysterious South Florida standard, which the Florida Trib undertook in partnership with the media and tech podcast Question Everything, also shows how easy it is for the real people behind these digital doppelgangers to remain in the shadows. Evidence of the staggering capabilities of AI and the threat it can pose to an unsuspecting public in a damaged democracy. Well, a sham of a democracy. We live in an oligarchy, not a democracy. Clearly, whoever's behind this doesn't care about the truth, said a senior VP at the Poynter Institute, which is a global nonprofit dedicated to strengthening democracy by improving journalism, aka also maybe a CIA front, maybe, allegedly. The only way to address it is to try to find somebody who actually controls the keys to this website. So, to investigate who was behind the South Florida standard, the Florida Trib and Question Everything turned to experts to look for digital fingerprints in the source code of the site. Casey Frechette, a journalism professor at the University of South Florida with 2 decades of web development experience, reviewed the South Florida Standard site and other associated entities at the request of the Florida Trib. Analyzing the code behind the sites, Frechette identified a trail of digital breadcrumbs that connect the South Florida Standard to similar local news website in South Carolina known as the Charleston Sentinel and a tech-focused site in California called the San Francisco Download. All contained evidence that they were built from the same source code and are controlled by the same entity. Quote, there are really strong signals that this collection of sites is all part of the same network and specifically managed by the same operator, he said, adding that he was 99% confident in his finding. The 3 purportedly local news outlets share more than the same source code. They share an overlapping roster of AI reporters who have the same names again as people who've been convicted of or accused of fraud or conspiracy in recent years. The Florida Trib has identified at least 9 such individuals across the 3 sites. Frechette's analysis also confirmed that buried deep in the code of the local news sites were links to a Philadelphia-based online reputation management firm called the Discoverability Company, founded by tech executive Drew Chapin. A former startup CEO who pleaded guilty to defrauding investors in 2021, Chapin has since turned his personal experience of batting down embarrassing Google results and negative news articles about himself into a professional career, helping individual clients and businesses build their online reputations and bury their unwanted search results. Chapin is also a leader of the White Collar Support Group, a community of defrocked business executives helping each other navigate prison life after lockup. He claims he finds meaning in helping people convicted of nonviolent crimes overcome online records that they feel don't reflect who they are today. Work that he says helps them secure housing, employment, and dignity. I actually used to pay a site a long time ago. It was like $79 a year for reputation monitoring that also made suggestions as to how you could potentially game the algorithm and increase and boost visibility of your properties within the algorithm when people search your names. Can't remember the name of that now. I'll have to look it up. Personal online reputation is I stopped doing that more than a decade ago, by the way. Personal online reputation is no different than what I'd been doing my entire career, just that instead of building up a new mobile app or an e-commerce store, it was individuals. He coached the group on how to build a new online identity, not by deleting all their social media accounts and erasing their digital history entirely, but by leveraging online properties like personal websites and news outlets to share a counter-narrative that overpowers the problematic results of the past. Every podcast episode, every blog post, every news interview is a chance to build more authority within the search engine's algorithms and rank their preferred results higher on the front page of Google, he explained. Quote, each piece of content that you produce is another opportunity to claim one of those spots that you're seeking to reclaim. Your best approach here is to really displace the old stuff. Bury it. Take control of the narrative. And remember, search engines go based upon recency also. So publishing something newer is going to rank you higher in the algorithm if they consider it to be of quality. So now we talk about a collapsing news ecosystem. The rise of South Florida Standard and its sister sites in other communities comes as the country is facing a historic collapse of the traditional news industry. No surprise. Long-standing news outlets, once trusted pillars of communities, are closing their doors and leaving news deserts in their wake. Many that remain are laying off staff, while some experiment with AI-generated slop, aka content, themselves in an attempt to stay afloat. Websites masquerading as legitimate news outlets have rushed to fill the vacuum, many of them propped up by powerful corporate and political interests and the Israel lobby aiming to control the narrative and shape public opinion with little transparency on their intent, ownership, and funding. Known to academic researchers as pink slime outlets, named for the cheap meat byproduct used as filler in the processed food, these sites now outnumber local daily newspapers in the U.S., according to analysis from NewsGuard, who I have a lot of problems with. As of 2024, NewsGuard identified over 1,265 pink slime outlets, surpassing the 1,213 daily newspapers still in operation. Since 2005 alone, the country has lost almost 2,900 newspapers and almost two-thirds of its journalists, 43,000 of them, according to Northwestern University's Medill Local News Initiative. Medill is one of the top journalism schools in the country, behind Syracuse. With the lowest number of news outlets per capita in the continental United States, Florida's media ecosystem could be especially vulnerable to the risks posed by these sham news outlets, now fueled by the advanced capabilities of AI. Long known as a sunny destination for transient retirees and fraudsters alike, Florida is central to the modern conservative political movement and a training ground for far-right ideologues and violent extremists, whatever that means. But also, remember, the Scientology. The state is no stranger to websites that covertly advance the agenda of powerful politicians and corporate interests, receipts for those, as part of an elaborate strategy to bash critics, shape policy decisions, and influence elections. Researchers have found that Florida is already home to dozens of so-called pink slime outlets and are part of a national network of more than 1,000 sites backed by conservative think tanks, donors, and political operatives. They're the ones that are funding this shit because they're the ones with the money. Stuff like this has zero value to the public. And in fact, it has a negative impact on the news ecosystem because it clutters the environment. They're flooding the zone. So here we go. Identifying Chapin as the person behind the South Florida Standard was not a straightforward pursuit. Site admins for the Standard responded to a reporter's initial questions through email and wouldn't identify themselves. All names on our site are randomly generated by AI, and any apparent connections to real people are coincidental, they said in a statement. How convenient. South Florida Standard has no corporate owner. Bullshit. It's a website we're developing with the intent of building search engine authority and selling to a domain investor who may use it to develop a news property or a newsletter or a similar digital property. This is common in the SEO community. Sure it is. Questioned later by a reporter, Chapin, the founder of the Discoverability Company, acknowledged responsibility for the site, which he described as a 6-month experiment to build geographic topical authority and to better understand the algorithmic staying power of his clients' unwanted search results. Who are your clients, dude? I'll bet he's not disclosing that. He said he was unable to participate in an interview with the Florida Trib over the phone until late May, but he did sit down with a reporter for Question Everything and responded to subsequent emailed questions from the Trib. Archived versions of his news sites show at least one has been in operation for far longer than Chapin initially stated, dating back to 2023. At some points that year, every reporter listed on the homepage of the San Francisco Download shared the same name as someone convicted of fraud, including Chapin himself. In some instances, past offenses align with the purported coverage areas of the reporters. So what you're doing here is you're muddying down. So if they do search for one of these convicted people, it now shows that they're writing articles for the San Francisco Download. Maybe they've rehabilitated themselves. Maybe they've gone legit now. That's one of the goals here. Also to just create AI slop articles, but to try to clear the names of convicted fraudsters, including the guy who owns the site. How convenient. In some instances, past offenses align with the purported coverage areas of the reporters. A person convicted of duping buyers into purchasing Ferraris that didn't exist now writes about the automotive industry because he allegedly has expertise in it. Can you spot the fraud here? Some of the reporters also had personal websites identifying them as staffers at Chapin's fake news outlets. Those personal sites, which bore markers linking them to the discoverability company, go figure, have also since been taken down along with the news sites. So he got caught and he shut his operation. And he'll start up across the street under a new name the next day. Quote, the work I do is about helping people advocate for themselves and assert themselves in the conversation happening about them online. No, what he's doing is proving that you can game the algorithm, and he's learning and he's teaching you how. I don't discuss specific client engagements and won't confirm or deny any individual relationship. That's because when politicians and the CIA are paying you, you're not allowed to disclose that. In all, allegedly. In all, Chapin said he stood up 17 similar AI-driven news sites across the country, producing more than 3,500 URLs and drawing more than 44,000 visitors. That's not very many, to be honest. But flooding the zone with slop is much more important. 3,500 URLs publishing slop content that's going to bury legitimate articles that indicate these people had committed fraud is a problem. Chapin wouldn't disclose a full list, but the portfolio included sites purporting to cover state politics in New York, New Jersey, local news in Philly, and even a Hawaii-based medical journal. My guess is that there was a doctor in Hawaii that had been convicted of fraud, and they decided that they were going to create a position of authority for him in writing a medical journal locally. This seems like the MO of what they're doing. With a $10 domain name and a brief prompt, an AI assistant can pump out a new local news site, complete with a mission statement and masthead, a team of fake reporters with phony bios and email addresses, and a bevy of articles, all in just 15 minutes as he demonstrated for a reporter in real time. What an idiot. In the end, he said his experiment didn't work very well. Search engines can tell the difference between the New York Times and a fake outlet, and his sites weren't breaking through. Bullshit, because you wouldn't have kept doing it if he hadn't gotten caught. I don't know whose job it is to make sure that people are represented fairly and wholly online, and I don't agree with all the ways that the algorithm works, but like you said, he told a reporter, that's a game you have to play. So, with another major election cycle looming, sites like the South Florida Standard paint an AI-generated picture of where the media landscape may be heading as traditional news outlets go belly up and are rapidly replaced by pseudo-sites designed to deceive rather than inform. Or those traditional news outlets are getting scooped up by corporate media and turned into Israel-first propaganda outlets. Much of the content published by the South Florida Standard appears to have been lifted from Florida Politics, a website run by publisher Peter Shorshak, whose coverage has become a must-read for many political insiders and journalists. Kevin DeLuca, a professor at Yale University who studies the political economy of media, has analyzed pink slime sites across the country. DeLuca described the South Florida Standard as deceptive and more sophisticated than other similar sites he's seen, noting the fabricated reporters with professional-seeming headshots. They probably lifted them from thispersondoesnotexist.com. Go back 4 years, and we actually used to play a game called Who Are These People? Funny enough. And where is it? Where is it? Where's my what? Wait, anyway. So who are these people? Sorry, this one's taking a while. Longer than I wanted it to.
What's that about?
I don't know. All right. When an opportunity arises, like a campaign needs some good publicity, or a company wants to influence public opinion, then they're set up basically to take that money and place the article. Right. Okay, sites like the South Florida Standard have obvious political uses. A glimmer of hope is that researchers have found that pink slime sites don't actually get a lot of traffic, but that doesn't mean that they don't have an impact. Remember that it's also feeding AI, and that all these large language models are basically an aggregation of everything that they consume, including these slop sites. All right. He said that a number of sites he's aware of that are plagiarizing his content. AI bots pose a definite threat to his outlet because they scrape so much content at once that they can temporarily overwhelm his website and block his readers' access. In short, DeLuca says this is not good for a democracy. Agreed. But worse, not only are we getting fake news outlets and fake reporters, this guy, Sam Bright on Substack, published about how the next Cambridge Analytica scandal is that there are fake fans. These are AI slop videos, AI-generated videos on the Facebook page, Great British People. AI slop. Our social media feeds are swamped with fake videos purporting to depict interviews with ordinary voters complaining about rampant immigration, or pre-news anchors spraying out false headlines about asylum seekers. People are even creating fake podcasts with AI-generated hosts and guests. I promise you I'm not AI. Fuck Israel. AI wouldn't say fuck Israel. They're not allowed to. All right, if you wanted to create a far-right media channel before the advent of ChatGPT, you'd have to find someone dumb and prejudiced enough to go on camera, procure all the equipment, and then spend hours shooting, editing, promoting that content. This cost and effort acted as a major barrier, thankfully, to wannabe racist influencers. Now, all you have to do is draft a few well-tailored AI prompts. Virtually anyone can start a far-right platform. Combine this with the built-in algorithmic incentives to pump out emotive content that appeals to people's worst instincts, and we've somehow managed to turbocharge the worst aspects of an already dystopian social media climate. There's a lot more to this I want you to read, so I'm going to drop this one in the description. This is again at WrightsBright, WRITES, writesbright.substack.com. Now, next one, I'm going to bounce a little bit all over the place here because this is having to do with data centers. Now, AI slop articles and outlets, AI slop fans, which is being housed and generated by AI slop facilities like these data centers. But how bad would it be if the data centers were giving people cancer? Bombshell alert from the data center hell in Northern Virginia. Ashburn, Loudoun County is exploding with a jaw-dropping 20% massive spike in deadly cancers, leukemia, and brain tumors going through the roof since 2025. One tiny hotspot turning into a killer zone. Are your kids even safe anymore? Guess what changed? They crammed hundreds of power-guzzling data centers into that area. Virginia alone has 650 to 685 of these monsters running right now, with Ashburn's data center alley, packed with Amazon, Microsoft, and Google giants sucking up every watt thanks to fiber, power, and fast permits. Coincidence? You decide. So here's where all the data centers are. And now you've got people reporting massive spikes in cancer, deadly cancers, since they started implementing these data centers in 2025. Then you have the 5G cell towers or weapons, someone responding. So, and then you got more in the comments. Oh, hang on, there's more. Okay, so here's where more data centers. I don't know if these are the cancer clusters or the data centers. These are more data centers. Look at just how many there are going into all these different areas. Want to move to Virginia? I don't. So there's that one too. Do your own research on that. I'm not 100% sure exactly what the correlation is, but I certainly don't want to live near any of these data centers. Next, we showed a video from Lila earlier, and this has to do with somebody abducted by ICE that she knows. Now, I can't say that I vetted this. I haven't. I trust her judgment here. She claims to know this person personally, and that this is affecting somebody she personally knows. So let's hear what's going on.
Everyone, so this is really urgent. My friend had a baby and her partner just received an order of deportation, even though he's been in the country for decades, since he was like in high school. And we cannot allow this Trump administration to tear another family apart. They just had a son in April. They really need to stay together. And we need to help them cover their legal fees, which, by the way, this administration knows that families cannot cover the legal fees required to help people stay in the country. So we really need to get together and donate. $5, $2, whatever you can. I've gotten rid of every other link in my bio except this one so that you can do this very easily. Please go. Don't be a bystander. Don't assume that someone else is going to do it. Please do it. Thank you so much. Hey, everyone.
Okay. And I shared this to my Twitter last night. Kamishwari Kate said that the data centers are microwaving our brains. Totally agree, and I'm worried about it for sure. So this is someone who was abducted by ICE. If you go to Layla Hegazi on Instagram, you can find her there. Also, again, I will link my tweet that has the GoFundMe for this family. Again, they're not putting out names because they're trying to protect any retribution from ICE at all out there. Would be my guess as to why. Now, I follow this guy over on Facebook. His name is Barrett Brown. Apparently, he's been in the intelligence counter-narrative community for a long time and had been kind of on hiatus, just recently reemerged and came back. Wrote an article over at Counterpunch that's very long and very interesting about the neo-Nazi influencer who helped build Peter Thiel's online influence empire, talking about a guy by the name of Jeff GC. All right, an investor and political operative who had run companies on behalf of pro-Trump billionaire Peter Thiel, co-founder of defense surveillance giant Palantir, and business partner of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. At the time, he defined mimetic warfare, a term he coined as a subset of information operations or psyops, psychological warfare tailored to social media. This guy's not a good dude. Read this article about this guy and his links to Peter Thiel, and support Barrett Brown. Next, Descent in Bloom. She was in chat earlier. She messaged me, and I saw she said that she was exhausted and could not stay awake. She's got work tomorrow. She's a supporter of this network, and we've shared a lot of her articles over the past year. And she wrote another one this week that apparently caught the attention of some of the people that were listed in the article, called Tech Bros and Trad Wives Inside J.D. Vance's Pro-Baby Ideology. Is America really under-babied? Scratch the surface of the so-called pronatalism movement And what surfaces are a modernized eugenics and white nationalist movement. And again, that was getting some people very upset as to the language that was being used, where she's literally just grabbing the flyers from their events and repeating what they had said, childless cat ladies and underbabied. Okay, so read this article. It's a 14-minute read. Fascinating. I think I have two more things. One, antiwar.com Indie Media Award honoree, Dave DeCamp, who's also an Indie Media Award honoree. This one is infuriating, and this is how Congress keeps kicking the can down the road and acting like they don't have the power to stop Trump from doing what he's doing in Iran, especially because the 60-day statute of limitations since he first invaded has now passed. But they voted to basically allow him to continue or to not stop him. So according to this, Dave DeCamp, the other May 14th, House narrowly defeats Iran war powers resolution in a 212-212 vote, where Vance played the deciding vote. I'm sorry, not Vance. But that goes down. The House narrowly defeated a war powers resolution that would have directed Trump to end the U.S. war against Iran, as the U.S. continues to enforce a blockade of Iranian ports and is considering restarting the full-scale bombing campaign. The bill failed in a tie vote of 212-212 with 3 Republicans, Massey, Barrett, and Fitzpatrick. And by the way, Massey just lost his primary for re-election, turning him into a Streisand effect and elevating him even higher with the dissident community, voting in favor of ending the war. There's one Democrat, Representative Jared Golden of Maine, voted no. Warren Davidson from Ohio, who supported previous war powers, also voted against the bill. Right? So the vote marked the 3rd time a war powers resolution to end the war against Iran was brought to the floor of the House, and it was the closest that the bill came to passing. But it still hasn't passed. Congress has been allowing him to do this, which is giving them their tacit authorization. The Senate has voted 7 times on an Iran war powers resolution, and the latest, held Wednesday, came closest to passing. The bill failed in a 49-50 vote with 3 Republicans crossing and 1 Democrat. Now, allegedly, they just did another one today, and a fourth Republican crossed, even with Fetterman voting the other side. Allegedly, I don't know what that means yet. We'll see. While Trump admin officials have declared the 1973 War Powers Resolution unconstitutional, they've also been desperately trying to circumvent the law, which was passed to rein in the executive branch's disregard for the Constitution's requirement that Congress has the sole power to declare war and spend $72 billion in the first 60 days like Trump did. Infuriating. The 60-day deadline expired on May 1st. The administration has tried to claim that the ceasefire should have paused the clock, but the blockade means that the military is still engaged in hostilities across the country. Mental gymnastics. Absolutely insane. Infuriating. Go follow Dave DeCamp over at Anti-War News and over on Substack as well. Now, this one, I can't give it its full due yet on this one. On this episode, I may dig into this later on down the road, because this is a really important article. I don't normally cite High Times, okay, though I am a weed smoker and a big advocate for cannabis. Okay, this is an article that was sent to me by somebody that was part of this nonprofit and said, if you're interested in covering this, this is a story. The feds wouldn't study hemp as food. A nonprofit just did it for under $10,000. A 501c3 commissioned accredited private labs. They commissioned accredited private labs to test whole hemp biomass. The results are preliminary. They also answer a question that USDA's food data infrastructure has spent 7 years not asking. Hemp has been federal food in the United States since 2018. Bet you didn't know that. 7 years later, the USDA's main nutritional database still has no entry for the whole plant. Seeds, yes. Plant, no. 501c3 called Food First Initiative just spent about $10,000 in donor money paying private labs to do the work. What did we learn? USDA's Food Data Central has a hulled hemp seed entry since 2018 flagged as not to be updated. It has never published nutritional data on whole hemp biomass. Right? So a 501c3 called Food First paid AGQ USA and Eurofins to test fresh and dried biomass with and without seeds. The samples came from a federally compliant grain-type cultivar, all right, grown in Flint, Michigan, tested at 1.27% total CBD and no detectable THC. You could smoke 50 pounds of this and never get high. This is not about high. The data is preliminary. Single farm, single cultivar, single growing season, no peer review. The labs came back with numbers. Per 100 grams of dried seedless hemp biomass, you have 5,990 milligrams of calcium, 2,336 milligrams of potassium, 8.67 grams of protein, and 34 grams of dietary fiber. This stuff's healthy. With seeds in the mix, it's even healthier. More protein, more grams of fiber, 321 calories per 100 grams. I don't necessarily know if I want to eat hemp food, but 100 grams of dried hemp biomass, whatever that means. So, looking at hemp as a food source, not just as a building material or as a heating source. I mean, hemp has so many different applications. So check out this article over from High Times. I will link it in the description as well. All right. So that was our extended lightning round. I think it took about an hour. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with me on that. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I brought a bunch of user-funded outlets there that you probably would not see on any other show collectively, featured in one episode. I'm proud of that. But in order to continue doing that, I kind of do need some support and your help. The ways to help are Cash App, $ Indie News Network. I know Natalie hooked it up last week. Thank you for that. At ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, and Kameshwari Kate did that earlier tonight. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Ralph Mejia up here on the board also did that recently. Thank you, Ralph. Okay. At Patreon.com/Indie News Network. We have, I think, 10 or 11 subscribers to the network there. You can also subscribe monthly over at INNnewsletter.com on Substack or at IndieMediaToday.com. You can subscribe monthly or annually there. And then you can visit our news website and aggregator site called IndieNewsNow.com, which has a section to keep the news free with a Stripe link, or you can pick up some merch at our merch store. There's a link there, and we've got shirts like "We Deserve Better PSYOPs" and "If a people are occupied, then resistance is justified." And you can get an indie t-shirt. I actually have one that I love and that I wear regularly now. You can get an INN logo shirt. Pick that up. All right, everyone. I've got a couple more. I've just got the GoFundMe's to get to, and then we will. Oh, before we do, as part of the lightning round, real quick, I wanted to call attention to a couple of newer podcasts and things that people may not have been aware are happening. So the first one is Caitlin Johnstone. Love her. Indie Media Award honoree. Okay. She does writes articles, poems. She does art. And her husband often narrates her articles. But what you don't get a lot of is their interaction, them talking with each other, them having a conversation. Well, they decided to start a podcast together, which is about a 45-minute long audio of them kind of just riffing on stuff. And their interaction is adorable. I just love those two. I really do. I could eat them up with a spoon. So check that out over at her Substack. The most recent one was on May 15th, 5 days ago, right, where they talk about AI, weaponized robots, and the ethics of porn. Fascinating. I just love hearing their takes. raw and unfiltered versus the filter of having it written out. So go check that out at Caitlin Johnstone. It's it just spell out her name, but the extension is .one, the last three letters of her name, rather than a .com. Also, this outlet, another Indie Media Award honoree, Double Down News, decided to launch a brand new weekly news magazine program similar to ours, but much more in-depth, better funded, and studio-driven. They are a 1 million follower outlet. Check this out, just for 30 seconds.
Hello, and welcome to Double Down Newswatch. This week, as 4 Palestine action activists face prison, we look at how the British state is taking an axe to civil liberties to protect Israeli arms factories. After Britain's ruling Labour Party is obliterated in local elections, we have the deputy leader of the triumphant Greens, Martin Ali, and Labour's former Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, in the studio to help us dissect the results.
If the solution as a result of that coup is West Streeting, we're lost. West Streeting is Peter Mandelson's protege.
And Lorna Hosford will be here with DDN Verify and a look at this week's social media. I'm Richard Sanders, and this is your weekly look at the world through the eyes of independent media.
Big fan of this outlet and excited about what these guys are now doing. Third thing is that I was actually featured on Macroaggressions. I was on with Charlie Robinson, and we spent about an hour and 15 minutes or so talking about independent media. We talked about Rockfin. This is up on IndieMediaToday.com. So I published this as an article with the full video, but also linked it to all of Charlie's channels where it's up at the Macroaggressions podcast, which I encourage everyone to subscribe to. Okay, that's over on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and of course on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, iHeartRadio. Charlie is a 2023 Indie Media Award honoree. So this whole section is really featuring Indie Media Award honorees. And I mentioned IndieNewsNow a couple times. I do want to show the website itself so that anyone who has not seen it before can see it. You're going to see my banner up across the top because I can edit it. It's a WordPress self-hosted site. It gets refreshed all the time. So here's a new Scott Horton show featuring Dave DeCamp, Dave's newest anti-war news podcast. Here's George Hazim. And you could just scroll. This is an infinite scroll of independent ad-free content. And like I said, we can also get to our Keep the News Free section where you can leave a tip for the network through credit card or any method that you can imagine. Okay, you can also watch us live, and there's a plug-in with this live stream right now. You can even get, like I said, merch, and our merch over here. This is the Shanda collection, but I wanted you to see the INN t-shirt. And Steve and Ryan over, Ryan Christian on T-Lab Tuesday today over on AM Wake Up was saying, you know, the phrase of the week is "we deserve better PSYOPs." So if you feel that way, get yourself a "We Deserve Better PSYOPs" t-shirt or tank top over at the INN merch shop. $20 in white, $23 in black. Okay. Those are my little plugs and promotions, but I did want to mention that I was very proudly a guest on Macroaggressions. I've been a listener of Macroaggressions for a long time. Charlie's such a good dude and a good listener, and he's got really interesting takes, and he digs into the history of banking and corruption and conspiracy, and I'm a big fan. So go support Charlie. Okay. Now we'll get to the GoFundMes real quickly, and then we'll cut out of here because I know it's already 12:40. Jeez. So first, of course, we talk about Natalia. We talk about all these people every week because we don't want to let any of this go. They still need help. Their cases are still pending. They are still in the situation that they're in, and we don't want to forget about them or let them think that anybody is forgetting about them, which we aren't. So free Natalia. Natalia was stopped last summer at a routine traffic stop. She was arrested based upon some questionable ICE stuff, put into an ICE holding facility. Dissent in Bloom wrote an excellent article about this last summer, talking about corruption in Ohio and how they are profiting from keeping immigrants locked up in ICE facilities pending deportation. Now, she has asylum here. I don't understand why they haven't accepted that and allowed her to be free here, but they haven't. We heard from Cowboy Kitty, who is a member of our audience and our family, that he spoke to her about 6 weeks ago, and she was not doing well in the facility, that nobody there speaks her language, that they were feeding substandard food that sometimes had mold and disgustingness, and that a lot of the people that were there spoke English or Spanish, but nobody spoke Ukrainian. There are no translators, and it's very difficult, naturally, because what they want is to get these people to self-deport and make their jobs easier in having to go through the process of persecution. It's awful. So if you can help, they need help. She needs help funding her legal defense and, of course, paying all the bills that happen while we, while this is happening, because bills still pile up at the apartment she lived in, and everything still is ongoing. So free Natalia. Next, we have justice for Aspen. Aspen Martin is an activist. Her mother, Halo Benson, also an activist. The two of them were very active in supporting the Free Assange movement in Oklahoma. Aspen traveled to Tennessee to see a friend. They all said, hey, let's go to a music festival in Florida. I interviewed her and her mother. They told this whole story. We did a fundraiser for her. Descent in Bloom wrote an article detailing what happened to her when they were driving back through Georgia. The RV she was in was pulled over. The vehicle was searched. Massive quantities of drugs were found that she had no idea was there. She was arrested and put in jail for 2 weeks in county lockup, and she's now facing decades in prison for trafficking. What we need to do is hire expert witnesses, and lawyers to try to get her out of this. I don't know how successful we're going to be, but we need somebody to try. And we've been trying for a while. Link tr.ee/justice, the number 4 Aspen. You can learn all about the case and also donate to the GoFundMe. Here is the GoFundMe link in the chats. And then we've got, and that's Aspen's GoFundMe that I put in the chat. Finally, we've got our sister Shanda, who we lost last month, at the beginning of last month, due to small cell lung cancer. She fought for 18 months, and she lost her fight. But the bills continue, and her legacy continues. And one of the things that we did was we launched the Shanda Masta Fuck Cancer Collection at the Indie News shop. I think she would approve of this. And any proceeds from any profits from selling these shirts go towards her expenses and to her family once I get them. And once that happens, once we finish that out, we'll then put it towards some kind of cancer research. I'm not looking to profit from this. I just want people to know who she was, to talk about her, to talk about what she stood for and what she fought for. And we love her and we miss her. And this is one way to keep her memory alive. So pick yourself up a Shanda Masta t-shirt, tank top, or hoodie over at the Indie News shop. You can get there by going to IndieNewsNow.com, click on the merch link. Okay, everyone. Man, that was a long one. I had a feeling it was going to be a long one after 12 days of being out, but thank you for hanging with me. I can't believe all the crap that's happening out there, how we're being hit from every angle, and our senses are just being bombarded and assaulted, and you don't even know where to look because your head's on a swivel and you can't even look in enough places all at the same time. It's frustrating, and I appreciate you raging out with me and hanging with me and letting me work through it. And hopefully you learned something too. Please share the show. Please let other people know about this show and about INN, about Indie News Network. And I'll see you next Tuesday, believe it or not. And what else? Love you all. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Again, see you next Tuesday, fam. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to me, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe?
People still owe money. People still owe money. No. People still owe money. People still owe money.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Such a difficult decision. I bet you finally feel like you're home. Home.
right in the center where the haves meet. You were proud of incremental half speeds. You were getting down in the AOC dance line, hands tied, nodding to the backbeat. You'll Secret Service dive in front of any representative alive, being asked for the very bare minimum. And you'll turn into that same kind of hard right villain you detested should we mention they could ever muster maximum. Cause liberal denial's such a lofty ataraxia, where morals take a back seat, not up in the cab, but in hidden panels made by federal human traffickers. If you trust the autopilot, then you're just a sleeping passenger, passively accepting that it isn't us the bastards serve, making peace with all the evil walking on this rancid earth, seeking unity with those who bound your hands at birth, glancing up at fascists on a bloody dais thinking they just need a push. Not a holy man, but I'm praying for a burning bush. Yeah, I know you'd love to look away, but love, you need to look. There are many massacres the country manufactured that will never make the books. Now here's your fucking hook.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home.
Home on the range of excuses. Justify some fracking, water down pollution, paint a fresh coat of bipartisan charm over backroom collusion. Your consent is being manufactured by illusions, marketing executives in federal seclusion, working day and night to keep you just the side of lucid, and to beat down for calling out abuses. So fuck all these progressives who can speak on revolution once they empty all your powder out and spit on all your fuses. I prefer to judge a leader not by quality of tweets, but the six-figure book deals she chooses, donors he betrays, and donors that he'd gladly take a bullet before he refuses, slogans he reuses, buzzwords he produces, then he spews like mucus.